Requesting everybody to please take your seats. Katyal, and I welcome you all to today's event on the first EU-India Green Hydrogen Forum, organized by European Union and Ministry of New and Renewable Energy, Government of India. The event has been organized in close cooperation with the Confederation of Indian Industry and the Hydrogen Europe Forum. I welcome you all, and we'll be starting in another 2 minutes with our sessions. Thank you. Once again, I would like to welcome everyone on today's event of First EU-India Green Hydrogen Forum. Welcome all. Before we start our inaugural session on policy and regulation to promote production and uptake of hydrogen in the EU and India, I would like to extend a very warm welcome to our esteemed dignitaries. Please, a huge round of applause for our esteemed guests for the day. Firstly, I would like to thank Her Excellency Ms. Kadri Simson, the European Commissioner for Energy, for joining us today. We thank you very much, ma'am, and I please welcome you to the stage. Please join us. I would also cordially welcome the Honorable Minister, Shri R.K. Singh, Minister of Power, New and Renewable Energy, Government of India, to the event. So please join us on stage. I would also like to invite Shri Indu Shekhar Chaturvedi, Secretary, Ministry of New and Renewable Energy, Government of India. So please join us on stage. I would also like to invite Mr. Vineet Mittal, Co-Chair, CII, Renewable Energy Council, and Chairman, Avara Group, to the stage. Welcome, sir. Please join us. I would also like to invite Mr. Yorgo Chatsimakakis, CEO, Hydrogen Europe, to the stage. We welcome you, sir. Please join us. Thank you very much. Now, I would like to invite Shri Indu Shekhar Chaturvedi ji to kindly deliver the welcome address.
Thank you very much. Honorable Minister for Power and Renewable Energy, Government of India, Mr. R.K. Singh, Her Excellency Ms. Kadri Simson, the EU Commissioner for Energy, distinguished participants, ladies and gentlemen. Let me begin by welcoming you to this first EU-India Green Hydrogen Forum. This obviously is an important step forward in India-EU cooperation and collaboration. Green hydrogen has immense promise for the world's decarbonization efforts, and it is for this reason that several major economies have formulated ambitious plans and strategies for green hydrogen or clean hydrogen. At present, the hydrogen produced from electrolysis represents only a tiny fraction of the 75 million tons of hydrogen consumed annually. The International Energy Agency estimates that by 2030, the total hydrogen demand will grow to over 200 million tons, with electrolysis contributing to over 80 million tons. To enable this, the installed electrolyzer capacity will also have to increase to several hundred gigawatt from the just 500 gigawatt that exists today. With the ambitious plans that various countries have put in place, these are exciting times for hydrogen. However, let me also say that hydrogen is somewhat an uncharted territory, with no country having extensive experience in producing and using hydrogen. What do we look forward to? We look forward to technological improvements in the various dimensions of hydrogen use, in electrolyzers, in storage, in transportation. We also see on the horizon extensive trade in hydrogen and its derivatives, from RE-rich areas to countries not so well endowed with RE resources. To enable this to happen, standards and regulations need to be harmonized. India-EU cooperation is important for forward movement in all these areas. Here, I would particularly mention the need to work closely for harmonization of standards. Let me also mention two major challenges as we move forward. One is the rapid building of infrastructure that would be required for use and trade of green hydrogen. And the other is financing untested technologies, making it difficult to raise competitive capital for green hydrogen and green ammonia. Let me briefly touch upon the green hydrogen plans that India has. We have drafted a mission document, the National Green Hydrogen Mission, and the dispensation it provides includes assured domestic demand so that supplies is scaled up, and with technological improvements and scaling up of supplies, we hope to see a reduction in costs of green hydrogen. We have tentative plans for direct support to green hydrogen production and perhaps for electrolyzer production. And this will be only for the initial capacities, it will be capped at a certain level so that the industry gets the signal that it has to be ultimately in the long run or in the medium run cost competitive. And it has provisions for research and development, pilot projects, infrastructure development. All this is included. We have a comprehensive plan that is still work in progress, but we hope that it will see light of the day very soon. The EU's RE-Power EU plan has provisions for 10 million tons of renewable hydrogen production by 2030, and an import of the same quantity from third world countries. Indian exporters would certainly like to take advantage of this and be able to export to the EU. Let me end by again emphasizing the need for very close cooperation between India and EU, particularly engaging our S&T institutions. I am sure such cooperation will be of immense benefit to both India and the EU. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Now I would like to invite Her Excellency Ms. Kadri Simson to the dais to kindly deliver the keynote address. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. Mr. Singh, Mr. Secretary, ladies and gentlemen. I am very happy to be here today with you. I want to thank our co-organizers for this forum. It's a great follow-on from our solar event yesterday. This is the first edition of the EU-India Green Hydrogen Forum, which I hope will be the first of many and a milestone in the development of a strong cooperation on green hydrogen between EU and India. Solar and hydrogen energy are both game changers for the energy transition. And whether we like it or not, the game and our global energy system has changed. Since February, it has been impacted by the Russian invasion of Ukraine. This unprovoked and unjustified aggression has made it very clear to the EU that we cannot rely on Russia as our partner in energy. It means that the implementation of the European Green Deal is now even more urgent. The green transition is a strategic investment in energy security because any additional energy we generate from solar, wind, hydropower, or biomass means less dependence on fossil fuels. Meanwhile, we still face the challenge of our changing climate. What we need is a shift in speed, not direction. Already in both India and the EU, we have our sights set on net zero. The EU by 2050 and India by 2070, and India has committed to producing 500 gigawatts of non-fossil fuel energy by 2030. Both of us are well on our way towards more sustainable energy sources, so the question is not if, but how. In the EU, we have committed to hydrogen as a big part of our how. Just over 2 years ago, we published our European hydrogen strategy, the first of its kind, with a goal of 10 million tons of hydrogen by 2030. Last year, we enshrined our climate goals in EU law and put forward a package for decarbonizing our gas sector. Our legislative proposals cover everything from certification to infrastructure and clear a path for a strong hydrogen sector in Europe. As I mentioned already, we had a wake-up call this year with geopolitical events. As a result, we ramped up our efforts on hydrogen even further. In May, we came out with our REPower EU plan, our blueprint to become fully independent from Russian fossil fuels. As part of that, we aim to be at 45% renewable energy in our mix by 2030. This is significantly more than our current agreed target of 32%, and includes an additional 10 million tons of renewable hydrogen, bringing our goal to 20 million by 2030. We don't just see this as a reaction to what is going on in the world, on the environment. It's also an investment agenda. At the EU level, we are expecting investments in the range of 320 to 460 billion euros. That includes investment to cover all parts of the value chain: renewable electricity production, electrolyzers, hydrogen transport, storage, and distribution. Funds foreseen to promote post-COVID recovery in the EU and the EU member states, as well as other EU financing instruments, will be used to support these investments. Our efforts in the EU are part of our bigger global push we are seeing across the world, including in India. Beyond our two regions, strong international cooperation must be the way forward for a number of reasons. First, to develop a global hydrogen market, including harmonized safety and environmental standards. We would like to set up a framework bilaterally with partners like India, as well as multilaterally. Second, cooperating across the globe also means a collective effort to help the transition in partner countries. For us, we are looking in particular at the EU neighborhood and key developing economies. Third, cooperation is needed for trade. We have high ambitions for production in the EU, but we will still aim to import renewable hydrogen to develop an EU market at speed and maintain competitive prices. Developing this kind of hydrogen partnership is something we have already started with the Mediterranean Green Hydrogen Partnership, as well as Chile and Namibia. The ambition is there for many countries, not just for trade, but also for the research and innovation that will form the basis of the global market. At this early stage, R&D is needed to scale up green hydrogen globally, and it's an area that historically has always benefited from a meeting of minds across countries. We also see the value of boosting access to affordable renewable hydrogen across the board. This is something we plan to do with the Global European Hydrogen Facility. For us, cooperating to shape the global hydrogen market is a necessity, and our clear priority is renewable hydrogen. From what I have seen during my visit here and during the discussions on solar energy yesterday, the EU and India have a similar vision. Yesterday, we discussed the EU-India Clean Energy and Climate Partnership. We have had great cooperation so far when it comes to solar energy. There is huge potential to do the same for renewable hydrogen. We want to develop plans for cooperation on green hydrogen together in the next few months. The EU and India can learn from one another on international standards, on research and innovation, and on policy frameworks. And we want to work with you and financing partners in view of a hydrogen project pipeline in India. There are many avenues for that cooperation: Horizon Europe, the Clean Hydrogen Joint Undertaking, represented here today, as well as the Trade and Technology Council. Ladies and gentlemen, hydrogen can and should be the central to the ongoing transition. I believe the EU and India are very much on the same page here, and I look forward to seeing how we move forward together. Before I hand over to Mr. Singh, I regret that I cannot stay to the end of this event because I have to return to Brussels for the extraordinary EU Energy Ministers meeting. But thank you for listening, and I pass the floor. Thank you.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Now I would like to invite the Honorable Minister, Shri R.K. Singh, to the dais to kindly deliver the keynote address.
Thank you. The European Commission of Energy, Ms. Simpson, Secretary, New and Renewable Energy, Government of India, Mr. Chaturvedi, Mr. Mittal, other dignitaries on the stage, ladies and gentlemen. Ladies and gentlemen, I remember I joined as the Minister for Power and New and Renewable Energy in 2017. And for us as a government, environment is a matter of faith. And energy transition, therefore, is something which we do, which we are doing, flowing out from our philosophy, our thinking. Our per capita emissions are the lowest in the world. They are 1/3 of the world average. If you look at the global stock of CO2 emissions till date, our contribution is only 3.4%, even though our population is about 17.7% of the world population. So historically, contribution to the accumulated emissions, CO2 emissions, which is causing the global warming, our share is very small. Even per capita emissions, our share is very small, but that's not the point. The point is that we believe in the environment. So we decided that we will transition, and we'll transition faster than any other major economy, and we have done that. We had pledged in our NDCs that we'll reach 40% by 2030, 40% of our capacity coming from non-fossils. We achieved that in November 21, 9 years in advance. So we have upped our ambition, and now by 2030, 50% of our capacity will come from non-fossils. And we shall cross that as well. We shall reach 50% well ahead of time. That's how confident I am about what we are doing and how we are doing it. The great thing in my country, I have 2 or 3 things going for me. Today, my established capacity is 168 gigawatts of non-fossil, out of which only 6,700 megawatts is nuclear. The remaining is all renewable. And I have 80,000 megawatts or 80 gigawatts under construction. So that makes 248 already. So I have to get to only about 200 odd gigawatts to reach my target, and we shall do that with time to spare well before 2030. Similarly, for emissions reduction, we are reducing emissions at one of the fastest paces in the world. We had pledged that by 2030, we will reduce our emissions intensity by about 33 to 35%. We've already reduced it by about 30%, and so we'll achieve that well in time. We have upped our ambition, the next NDC in Glasgow, to 45%. We'll achieve that before time. Now that's because, as I said, we have some things going for us. Environment is something which everybody believes in, and we have a very hotly contested, competitive political democracy. I mean, it's robust, it's competitive. But across the board, and we have state governments of all hues in all the states, all political hues from, left, extreme left to whatever. But I mean, I don't get any pushback on environment. I don't get any pushback on energy transition. That's going for me. The other thing which is going for me is that I have a huge market, and it's expanding. So the rate of growth varies from 7% to 9%. We've already become the 5th largest economy. We aim to become the 3rd largest economy in another about 2-3 years. That's a huge market. I mean, outside of China, it's the biggest market. So that's a huge plus. We've added so much of capacity, we've created demand, and the manufacturing capacities also we are adding. We've already become, in the words of Bloomberg, the most attractive market in the world for investment in renewables. Every major fund is invested here. And for putting up this capacity of 162 gigawatts of renewables, I haven't had to put in a single penny of my own government investment. I mean, it's all private sector. We just hold bids, people come and compete, and they're very highly competitive. We are, as I said, the most attractive market for investments in renewables, and we shall continue to be so because we have upped our ambition. Now, my demand is increasing. Because of the growing economy, my demand is increasing. So that also is giving me space to add renewables. So my addition to my renewable capacity will continue, and it will continue at a rapid pace. So when I called, I requested the IEA to send me an expert on hydrogen. And in 2018, mind you. Now that expert came, he gave me a presentation, And he said that hydrogen is the most promising source of energy whose time has not yet come. Well, it has come in just 2 years flat. Now, we've been thinking about it. We've been thinking about it because I said that our government, led by Prime Minister Modi, for us, environment is absolutely important. So he announced a hydrogen mission, on the Independence Day a year back from the ramparts of the Red Fort. And that we come out with policy formulations which will enable the production of hydrogen. Now, because we are a huge market, most of the production will be consumed here. Because as I said, we are going to decarbonize. We are already decarbonizing at a fast pace. Our pace of energy transition is rapid. Even in mobility, our pace is going to be rapid. The demand, in two-wheelers has already outstripped supply. In four-wheelers also, the demand is growing. You will see green cars everywhere. So that demand is also going to be huge. We just now came out with a bid for manufacturing of lithium-ion batteries for mobility. That bid was again oversubscribed, about 50 gigawatts of production. We'll come out with another PLI bid for manufacturing of batteries for storage, because we've added so much of renewable energy. Now we need storage to make sure that renewable energy is available round the clock. And hydrogen is a part of our plans. Now, do not go away with the impression that hydrogen is the answer to everything. It is not. It is not. It is not. So, going green does not mean only hydrogen. Hydrogen is just one of the elements which will go into going green. For example, if you use gray hydrogen for refining, you replace it with green hydrogen. You use gray ammonia for fertilizer, you replace it with green ammonia. And in steel making, again, it is early days, but many steel makers, ArcelorMittal has started a plant here, trying to come out with green steel. Now, these are experimental days, so steel making. Cement is another place where we want to try it out. So these are things which are going to be tried out. Now, as I said, we have an advantage because we are a huge market. So the manufacturing will come here. We are going to come out with a production-linked incentive for manufacturing of electrolyzers here, because we will need huge quantities of electrolyzers for our own market. And we'll do so. We'll make the green hydrogen and green ammonia for ourselves, and in larger quantities than any other country outside of China. I don't know what China is doing, but larger than any other country. As far as our cooperation with the European Union is concerned, I think that has a future. That has a major future. Of course, it depends on the policies which you adopt and the standards which you adopt. One thing is clear, that we will be producing hydrogen, green hydrogen, at the lowest prices. Unless I don't know what the prices. China's pricing is opaque. I don't know how they price it, but open competition, manufacturing will be totally transparent, and will have the maximum capacities. Now, here is what I want, why I came here. This is the biggest market going, and this is the most open market going. As I said, we have a totally transparent system. All my bids are transparent. I put in place a dispute resolution mechanism which is very fast, and that is why every fund is invested here. So when I come out with bids, please come and compete. Now you will face competition. Other people are competing. The funds from all over are competing in our renewable energy space. Come and compete in the hydrogen space if you have the technology. You will face competition. You will face heavy competition, because we have huge companies now. And all these huge companies, every day, I read in the newspapers. Today I read in the newspapers about one major, announcing 5, 10, 50 gigawatt scale investment in electrolyzers and green hydrogen. Similarly, other measures. So you'll face competition. But if you want the slice of the largest market in the world, you will have to compete. You are welcome to compete. That's why I came here, to come and tell you. You are welcome to compete. You produce here, produce for India. And that will give you the base to produce for European Union as well. That's what I am looking for. As far as the markets are concerned, I am a big market. bigger market. Now, as far as Europe is concerned, I would like to sort of dwell on 2 or 3 things. One, of course, is that we have the sun, we have the wind, etc. You will have to depend on imports. My sort of thinking would be that looking at what happened, you would need to diversify your sources of supply. Otherwise, you will be open again to repeat of what has happened. Now, in that diversification of sources of supply, you will have to look around. And of course, we shall say, and we shall demand that your market should be open and competitive. Now, that's something which will not be from you. I mean, you keep saying that market should be open and competitive. You've set up the WTO. Now, you need to follow that and have an open and competitive market. We shall compete. And that will benefit you because you will get green hydrogen and green ammonia at the lowest prices. That's my message to you. Have an open market. Open it for competition. If you do not, and then I will sort of accuse you of protectionism. Now, there's another point. So that has to sink in. And thereafter, once you do that, then you don't have any opportunity to come across to us and give us, homilies on various moral aspects. So basically, keep that in mind. Now, why I say this is because, I have seen some reports about, you tying up with some, tying up some sources of supply in some particular countries, etc. Go in for an open competition. That is one. The second is I had a look at the standards which you are planning. Now, those standards are plain and simple impractical. I have put up 168,000 megawatts of renewable energy capacity. I'll tell you this. They are impractical, plain and simple. Now, if you need round-the-clock renewable energy, you'll need storage. Now, the storage are of 2 types. One, of course, is battery storage. So, lithium-ion, and of course, many people are experimenting with other chemistries. So, unless you have storage, unless you are able to store renewable energy, you will not have round-the-clock renewable energy. If you do not have round-the-clock renewable energy, you will not be able to replace fossil fuels. Because right now, it is fossil fuels and nuclear energy which supply the base load. And you can't do without the base load. I've been in this sector now for some time, so I'll tell you this. Now, as far as nuclear is concerned, you can't add nuclear at a very rapid pace, number one. Number two, the question is about what do you do with the nuclear waste. Now, that is a question which this world will ask. What do you do with the nuclear waste? Where do you store it? Where do you store it? Gas is fossil, just like coal is fossil. Oil is fossil. They all emit carbon dioxide when you burn it. They all emit carbon dioxide. So basically, gas is not clean. So don't be under the impression that it is clean. You will still be adding to the CO2 burden of the planet, which I don't think needs to be done. So now you will need storage. If you are going green, you will need storage. I'm adding storage. And then we came out with one of the largest bids for storage, 1,000 megawatt hours. We'll come out with another bid for storage, 2,000 megawatt hours. The quantity of storage which we shall be adding, nobody else will be adding. Because I want around-the-clock green energy. Because I am serious about energy transition. So, if you are going to produce green hydrogen, you need to produce green hydrogen from renewables. And to make it viable, to make the price of electrolyzer is quite high. Incidentally, even the manufacturing facilities for electrolyzer are not sufficient, around the world. That's not happened. We've just started. And so we are putting up electrolyzer manufacturing capacity. Other countries would probably be putting up electrolyzer manufacturing. But it's not available right now. The quantity of electrolyzer manufacturing capacity in the world is very limited. It would be not more than about 4 gigawatts. That's it. That's it. Now, I myself need at least 50 gigawatts of electrolyzer, more than that. So, I'm going to put up manufacturing facilities. Now, but it will be expensive. Electrolyzer is expensive. So, you can't you can't say that I will use the electrolyzer only for one shift. The price of green hydrogen will go through the roof. Your steel will become uncompetitive. So you will have to use the electrolyzer in more than one shift, maybe in 2 shifts, 3 shifts. How can you do that using renewable energy? Only if you are able to store renewable energy, either in batteries or in pumped hydro. Now we are adding batteries and we are adding pumped hydro in large, huge quantities. So your standards need to be tweaked. Renewable energy, which is stored in any of these storage So there are three methods of storage. One, of course, is battery. The other is pumped hydro, pumped storage. And the third is hydrogen. You can use hydrogen also as storage. But hydrogen is the least competitive. Why? Because once you convert electricity to hydrogen, you are losing 30% of the energy. And then you reconvert hydrogen back to electricity, you lose a further 30%. So the hydrogen will not actually be very viable as storage. Similarly, hydrogen will not be very viable for transport, except for long-range heavy-duty transport. Because, the storage, supply chain, etc., are issues, are challenges. For four-wheelers, two-wheelers, battery is a better solution. So that's the route which we are adopting. So basically, you need to think through your strategy. You will be needing lots of green hydrogen, and green ammonia. Think about it. We are setting up bunkers in all our ports. We have signed up with my Minister for Ports for giving us space for setting up bunkers for storing green hydrogen and green ammonia for all the ports so that our shipping can use it. Your shipping can also use our ports for refueling when they become green. So we are going the whole hog. We shall transition, as I said, our rate of transition will be one of the fastest in the world. Not because we are polluting the most, we are polluting the least. We are polluting our per capita emissions, 1/3 of the world average, mind you, 1/3 of the world average. And even our contribution to global CO2 is just 3.4%. So not because of that, but because, as a people, we've venerated the environment for ages. We've venerated the environment. We've venerated the trees, the sun, the wind, the trees. I mean, we worship them all. And you will find, if you are looking for sources of supply, you will find India a country which is democratic, hugely democratic, open, a rule of law, and the lowest prices. Then, if you want to go elsewhere, that's your choice. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. Once again, I would like to thank our esteemed guests for the day. Her Excellency and Honorable Minister would now be leaving the venue, but we shall continue with the special addresses. Thank you, sir. Thank you again. We shall now continue with the special addresses, starting with Mr. Vineet Mittal, Co-Chair, CII, Renewable Energy Council, and Chairman, Awara Group.
Good morning, friends. Thank you for being here. It's a privilege to be addressing to all of you here. And I would echo what our minister said earlier today, that for India, green transition is a matter of faith. Our country worships sun as God. We worship abundant source of energy, wind as God, as well as we treat our rivers as mother. And those are the three sources which you need to provide reliable supply of green hydrogen, green ammonia, green methanol, SAF, all of those. So from an Indian context, I think what Government of India is doing is fairly unique. Unlike many other parts of the world, India is not only coming out with a mandatory requirement to have the green hydrogen purchase obligation on industries like city gas distribution, oil and gas, fertilizer, steel, and few others. But what we are also doing is through Solar Energy Corporation of India, we are consolidating the demand and going to come out with an standard bidding guidelines and purchase agreements. So the industry can sign green hydrogen contracts with a state-owned entity which is bankable in a bankable format, which makes it lucrative for bankers to fund and for investors to invest. So as Minister was saying, India has a very ambitious target, and probably we are learning from the mistakes which India and the rest of the world has made it in the past. We don't want to be purely dependent on lithium iron as a storage or the other rare earth metal at which world has no control, and probably 1 or 2 countries have massive deposit. So we should not be doing the same mistake which probably Europe did in over-dependence on one country and one region for their energy supply. And we have seen the consequences of what happens when one country controls your energy destiny. So friends, Europe has come out with a very ambitious plan of 20 million ton green hydrogen. And that plan can only become real if the policies are fair and equitable. I like the approach that in RED directive and detailed policy, Europe has come out with a plan that electron should be matched with the molecules. But why to decide should it be hourly or should it be weekly or should it be monthly? Let it be left to the technology. I also like the idea that all this capacity should come from the new renewable sources, because whatever is done. We need more greener planet, so every capacity should be brand new. But restricting it hourly matching of electron to molecule is counterproductive on hourly basis. It doesn't help planet, it doesn't help Mother Earth, because if the greening of planet Earth is the target, and Europe wants more and more reliable supplier from across the world, then they should encourage green hydrogen definition of every sovereign, but they should also ensure that every electron to molecule is matched, maybe monthly or quarterly, so that no one can play with it. And I think there is a good standard worldwide. Veritas, DNV, and few of the European companies have come out with the standards to audit not only your engineering design, but even the design basis report. And it should be very clear that green ammonia, green hydrogen coming from water, by splitting the water into hydrogen and oxygen, using electrolysis and green energy alone, would be considered green. But matching electron to molecule, I think, needs to be relooked at. And I know European Union has considered 2026 to grandfather it, but kind of capacity which can come by 2026 is going to be few million tons. There is, as our minister was saying, not enough electrolyzer, not enough bankers who understand this sector, not enough countries who have come out with their policies, and not enough solar module capacity. So I think if I am one of the early mover into this sector, I had moved in this sector from IT industry way back in 2009, and Tulsi Bhai is here, who we considered as a legend of renewable energy in India. He had started green energy transition when we were in the school and colleges, and he started the wind company in India. So India, because of its cultural legacy, has always believed in green transition. And what Europe can probably learn, that over-dependence on one country for solar module, something which is made at $8 is currently sold at $42. And same thing is happening in the gas. I looked at the gas pricing in the morning, and it was above 50 euros today. And if you look at, let's look at what my fertilizer friend and gray ammonia friend tells me, that to produce 1 ton of ammonia, 36 MMBTU of natural gas is consumed. So every US dollar increase in 1 MMBTU would be increasing the price of green ammonia by 36 US dollar per MT. So recently, if you look at gas prices have fluctuated from 50 to 70. So that means if you translate into just the raw material cost, forget about the capex cost, which my friend from Halda Topso would not like, because there is a capex and admin cost associated with every ammonia plant. But if you ignore it for time being, you are looking at $1,800 to $2,500 US dollar per metric ton as the ammonia price in the Europe. On top of this, if you address, if you look at what is available globally, is at $1,200 to $1,300 per ton delivered at Europe. So all the European ammonia companies are currently shut. So I think my takeaway from this is statistics and few others. So if you look at the same thing for urea, 0.58 kg of hydrogen is required, and urea's variable cost of production would be around 1,100 to 1,400 right now, based on the current gas prices. Whereas European urea is currently selling at 500 to 600 by importing it. So look at it as a warning sign as well as awakening sign. And if you expand it to the chemical industry and come to the ammonium nitrate, nitric acid, which uses 0.29 kg of ammonia for per kg of diluted nitric acid, then you are looking at something which can be done at $400 is currently selling at 600 or 700. So entire industry segment is getting impacted because of dependence on one country. So if I were you, I would look at two things. That any form of fuel is going to be seasonal. But what green ammonia, green hydrogen, green methanol, and India provides you 25-year stable price, my friends. So 25 years, so you can forecast your balance sheet, you can forecast your energy prices. And if I was Europe, probably I would recommend to partner with India bilaterally and do a 10 million ton contract, which Europe is targeting 20 million. Do 10 million ton contract, which will translate into 50 million ton of green ammonia with India at a fixed price. So which will give you 25 years of stability, and no youngster would stand in front of you and tell you that something which you produce at $2,000, rest of the world can do at €1,000. So, friends, I think it's a time to introspect. It's a time to look back that if one country can provide you solution for your future stability, where you become indifferent that in the winter you don't have to worry about heating your houses, I think that country is called friend, and you should partner aggressively with such country. And I'm proud that we are in India at the right time, in the right industry, with right set of investor. Europe has been partner in energy's transition of India. I myself, my first company, Welspun Energy, got funded from DEG, ADB. My next company, when I started, FMO, DEG, Proparco, they came as an investor. In my green ammonia venture, we are getting interest from all the European investors. So Europe has been supportive of India's transition story, but take it to the next step. Take it into the true potential of India. We have abundance of land in our deserts. We have a minister who understands the potential of this sector. He is willing to provide wheeling and banking because we have a huge grade. Take this as a bonus. And India is helping itself by helping you also. But it's a perfect example of win-win. What we learn at Harvard, it's called, there is a concept called zone of possible agreement and BATNA, which is a better alternative to negotiated agreement. So actually, whatever you negotiate with the rest of the world, the zone of possible agreements in India is best, and we can provide you scale, we can provide you the quantity, and we are already friends, and we can take it 2 to 3 notch above with this green transition. So thank you, friends. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much, sir. I would now like to invite Mr. Yorgo Shatsimakakis to the dais, please, for his special address. Thank you.
Dear friends, dear Mr. Mittal, the co-host of this event, Your Excellency Commissioner Simpson, and of course, your Minister, Minister Singh, I have to tell you, as a European, I hardly listen to ministers of such a high rank with such a knowledge about hydrogen worldwide. Congratulations. And also, absolutely. So, and this comes after such a short time. This is the first EU-India Green Hydrogen Forum, and after your speeches here, I can tell you it's definitely not the last. It's extremely promising what we heard, and I will tell you why. We are at the moment in a situation where we as Europeans always think we are moving fast, we are moving ahead, we are good. We were moving fast. I remember regulators from your country, from India, coming to Brussels, talking to us some 3 years ago about hydrogen. I have to say, the level of knowledge was limited, but it was a first attempt. What you did within these 3 years to understand this technology, to grasp it, is amazing. We did also something as Europeans. Not bad. The pandemic broke out, and we came up within 3 months with a hydrogen strategy. So don't forget, we had this European Green Deal pronounced and decided about, and the pandemic put that into question. It's clear. Pandemic interrupted the supply chains, and people thought, oh, let's go back to bread and butter. Let's not do these environmental green things. But hydrogen and the strategy on hydrogen brought the European Green Deal back on track. Within 3 months, from March, when the pandemic measures took place, until June, we were ready with this hydrogen strategy in 2020. A year later, the European Commission presented a big package called Fit for 55, and Mrs. Simpson, our commissioner, was leading on that with 3,000 pages, 1,000 mentionings of hydrogen. Lots of regulation proposed. Good. And then the catalyst came, the invasion of Russia into Ukraine, which really accelerated the pace. But what's the consequence? The consequence is that our prices, especially in Europe, worldwide, but especially in Europe, are skyrocketing, that our industries are in a difficult position, and that we still didn't take any measure, any concrete measure to address the hydrogen sector. We didn't. We did not. The US did. You saw the US Anti-Inflation Act, which was by a surprise, it passed. But this scheme is such a huge invitation to hydrogen investors from all over the world to come to the US. We still didn't answer it. And Mr. Mitt, I was really amazed about the detailed knowledge you have about a very important bureaucratic act that is on the table of Mrs. Simpson tomorrow. It's this delegated act on additionality and on how to measure the cleanliness of hydrogen. And you described it very perfectly. How can you dare, Europeans, to limit the possibilities of hydrogen to enable the energy transition, to make molecules green? How can you dare to limit it by a bureaucratic act to a very, very small market niche? This is crazy. And you also expressed that it makes it very difficult for you as a European partner to import hydrogen to Europe, because the same measures will be applied for imported hydrogen. At the same time, we announced big volumes. We want until 2030 to have 20 million tons of yearly production of green hydrogen. 10 million in Europe, as Mrs. Simpson said, and 10 million imported, so you're invited. In order to get there, the capacity of electrolyzers, and we have representatives of electrolyzer companies here in the room, needs to be ramped up at least by a factor of 100, at least, within 8 years. This is big possibility, but this is also big challenge. How can we do that? And that's why I address you, and I address our Indian friends. Electrolyzers are made out of steel, and the biggest steel producing country is India. If we want to succeed in this exercise, we only can do it together, because we need to see a lot of electrolyzer production here in India. Not only hydrogen production with European electrolyzers. I'm quite clear, we cannot make it alone. We need you here, but we also need to invite you then to understand our complicated bureaucratic rules. We will also, and you mentioned it, invite you to look into the CBAM, the Carbon Border Adjustment Mechanism. Sounds very complicated. In the end, all the products that come into the European Union need also to have a carbon footprint that reflects this energy transition. And if we do that together, this is absolutely possible and doable, but we need to do it together. And I'm quite amazed, I say it again, and I already excuse myself towards the Commissioner, how slow the Commission reacts on that big demand. But it's a week of decision, I can tell you. Tomorrow the Commission will look into it. There is also the Energy Minister Council. And next week the European Parliament, our European Parliament, decides about the Renewable Energy Directive, encompassing big decisions about hydrogen. I talked about steel. Steel will be one of the factors that brings us together. Also, the fertilizers, you mentioned the fertilizers. Let's put it very simple. Hydrogen adds a big element of geopolitics into the game. The guy who understood that first sits here in the first row. It's Thierry Leperc. He's the author of a book that I really recommend everybody to read. It's easy to understand. It's called Hydrogen is the New Oil. He was here, he will tell you later on, 40 years ago when he was a very young guy and invested in this country and produced solar energy here in this country as a European. Very knowledgeable and very passionate about hydrogen, because hydrogen needs passionate people, I can tell you. Why am I telling you that? Because still there are people who believe that there's a conflict between electricity and hydrogen. This is stupid. Hydrogen and electricity are only understandable together. I give you a very simple example to understand why this killer argument, it's not efficient, is utterly wrong. This is a photovoltaic panel, okay? This would produce in Brussels, where we normally work, 100 kilowatt hours. In Greece, where my grandparents and parents come from, 220 kilowatt. In India, 300 in parts of India. What I want to say is, it depends where you put it about how efficient it is. And this is important. If you are very efficient and transform it into a molecule, you can export it, you can store it. You become a player. India is among the biggest countries with regards to wind and solar. You will become a big player if you master electrolysis, if you master storage. And this is where we Europeans need you as a partner, because we cannot produce enough hydrogen, we will import it, but also as a technology partner. We don't have enough people to produce all this. It's very simple. We need you to help us to produce all this. And this is very clear. Now, time's up. That's why I would like to invite you. You said we are prime partners. Yes, you are. There's a big flagship event in the end of October in Brussels. It's the first time we organize this. A one-stop shop in Europe about all hydrogen technologies. 1 week, we organize it together with the European Commission and together with our partner from the Clean Hydrogen Partnership, Bart Bieberg, who will speak later on here. Please feel invited. Feel invited to join, to come. It's still open. And to understand why we Europeans are so slow. Sometimes we work fast. At the moment we are slow, just for 1 week. You will see next week is a week of decision. You will hear from Europe big things, and we need you as a partner to implement these big things. I'm really looking forward to a strong partnership. Again, it's the first time we meet on this high-level forum, and it will become a platform of success on a global scale. Thanks very much, and let's have a good, successful day.
Thank you very much, sir. This brings us to the third session for the day, International Trade in Hydrogen, Prospects and Need for Certification of Green Hydrogen. But before that, sir, I would request you to please take your seats in the audience. Thank you very much. Now we have the introductory remarks from Mr. Harip Blanco from International Renewable Energy Agency. He focuses on hydrogen power techs, and he would be joining us virtually for the event today.
Several carriers to do that. So that could be done through liquid hydrogen, through ammonia, liquid organic hydrogen carriers, or pipelines. And for each of those, you need a conversion step. So hydrogen to the carrier, then you transport it, and then you need to reconvert the carrier back to hydrogen. Each conversion step leads to additional losses, energy losses, and leads to additional costs. So that's why you need to minimize that. But what I want to highlight here is that we need to think broader than hydrogen trade and think of energy trade. And there, hydrogen can also provide a possibility. Hydrogen can be converted to other carriers, ammonia, methanol, even steel and synthetic fuels. And an advantage of that is that the transport cost of those commodities is lower, so it's more cost effective. And you also don't need to reconvert it to hydrogen because you would use directly those commodities. So I think in the discussion, again, we need to think broader than hydrogen and think also of those carriers. That was message one. The other one is that when you think of the hydrogen carriers, those four that I highlighted, liquid hydrogen, ammonia, liquid organic hydrogen carriers, and pipelines, the cost comparison usually leads to pipelines are attractive for short distances of up to 2,000 to 3,000 kilometers. And for longer distances, ammonia ships are the most cost effective. Just because of low transport and low conversion costs. And ammonia has a further advantage that it doesn't need to be reconverted to hydrogen and can be used directly as a carrier, as an energy carrier. When we look at 2050 scenarios, IRENA has published recently a couple of reports on trades. So if we look at hydrogen, it is expected to grow the flow towards 2050 by a factor 5. At least at a global level, and we estimate that about a quarter of that will be globally traded. And then half of that trade will be in the form of ammonia ships, half of that trade will be in the form of hydrogen pipelines. So we see for Europe, in particular for this event, an opportunity is to use the existing natural gas network to reconvert that, to repurpose that to hydrogen. That provides a lower cost of transport, and that's why we see in Europe transport by pipeline at a domestic level and also with neighboring regions, looking at North Africa specifically, could be attractive for that 2050 scenario. However, it will still need that longer distance import that will be done through ammonia ships, and that's where, of course, this dialogue with India can have an effect. The other key message I want to give is that a lot of the discussion is around cost and comparison of production cost plus transport cost. How does that compare with import cost, and how does that evolve over time? But I think a lot of, if we look at the longer term trends, costs will be closed for many countries. So importers will have multiple choices in a narrow cost range. Therefore, the trade flows will be largely defined by the geopolitical factors, what's not cost, the bilateral relationships, the development, the industry status in the exporting country, the level of policy support, among others. So that's why I think, the emphasis on cost should be complemented in these other factors. And that's why this type of dialogue and event like EU and India today can have a large impact on how those future trade flows look. Perhaps making the transition to the second topic of certification. So I will not repeat, probably we're all aware why certification is needed for the market creation, the sustainability and economic incentives. What I want to highlight is the next step. The next step in terms of a lot of the discussion today is focused around two aspects. If we look at the value chain, hydrogen value chain, a lot of the discussion is focused on the production. Emissions associated to the production of hydrogen, but I think we also need, particularly again, in this EU-India context, think of the transport step to make sure we have the emissions all the way to the point of delivery, not point of production, but also linked to what I said earlier, the certification of the conversion of hydrogen to something else, to those commodities that I mentioned earlier. So we think we should think broader than production only. That's one part. And the other is that when we look at the dimensions that are covering certification, the focus is usually on CO2 and greenhouse gas, but there similarly we should also look broader. So some certification schemes, voluntary schemes, are already looking at SDGs, so Sustainable Development Goals, and ESG criteria, things like water and land use, for example. So we need to think also broader than greenhouse gas and CO2 to ensure the sustainability, the full sustainability of the hydrogen produced and traded globally. And today we already see some schemes moving in that direction. So there are some schemes that are looking at ammonia certification already. So again, one more step beyond hydrogen only. But something that we already see is that there are many schemes ongoing. Depending on how you count, it could be 10 to 15 schemes that are efforts that are ongoing currently. And each one has different boundaries, different threshold, different processes that are production processes that are included. And that could lead to market fragmentation, where certain markets import or trade certain types of hydrogen. So that's why we need the type of dialogues that is happening today to make sure that there's consistency and compatibility between those certification schemes. And I think that's why this is a great opportunity to do that. I'll leave my remarks there. Thanks for your attention, and I hope this is food for thought for the upcoming panel. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir, for your introductory remarks. Now we have Ms. Daria Nuchevnik, Director Policy and Partnerships, Hydrogen Council, for the introductory remarks here. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, first of all, a big thank you to the organizers for inviting the Hydrogen Council to participate to this very timely exchange. To those of you who may not know us, the Hydrogen Council is a global coalition of CEOs representing industrial leaders in hydrogen across geographies, from Asia Pacific and the Middle East to the Americas and Europe. So the membership of the Council comprises industrial leaders across the value chain, so all the way from manufacturing, production, to midstream transmission, and of course all types of end users. We also bring together, thank you, global investors in hydrogen, some banks, investment companies, and we were recently joined by two of the largest sovereign wealth funds in the world, which manifests the commitment and the interest in the financial community to support hydrogen uptake across geographies. Now, we, of course, very much enjoy fruitful cooperation with our partners in Europe, in particular Hydrogen Europe, but also Clean Hydrogen Partnership. and our global partners such as the IEA, IRENA, as well as the International Organization for Standardization. There were already some discussions about the need for global common standards for hydrogen technologies, and this is some of the core priorities for the Council in terms of facilitating the development of these common standards when it comes to safety, but also sustainability. And of course, one of the ways in which Hydrogen Council has built its reputation historically is thanks to the data insights that we have been developing and the techno-economic assessment, the evolution of hydrogen technologies. We have a unique database of hydrogen projects around the world, and we are collecting data from our member companies. It goes through a clean room, and then we publish insights, and we are very proud to say that the Hydrogen Council publications are the world's most cited references on hydrogen deployment and uptake. And towards that, we are indeed very happy to be providing some insights into the number crunching that we have done on the development of the hydrogen technologies and the economic value of hydrogen, but also the sustainability value and the social value that hydrogen can bring. And I think in particular for looking at this geography, there is a tremendous opportunity in a country like India to deploy hydrogen in order to boost green growth and support and offer new opportunities for local communities by providing sustainable jobs and also tackling some issues like air quality. I mean, we are reminded of these issues these days when we are we see the growing levels of air pollution and smog. So that work on unlocking the social value is part of the work that we do in our hydrogen sustainability program. So we look at supporting global standards for assessing the sustainability attributes, supporting the design and the development of instruments to evidence them, certification, so I'm going to talk about it in a moment, and also looking at how hydrogen can contribute to the UN Sustainable Development Goals, both in emerging market economies and in developed countries. So this is the general scope of our program, but let's take a deeper dive into certification. Already, previous speakers have talked about the need for certification schemes for hydrogen in order to enable that cross-border trade, but also, importantly, certification systems for hydrogen play a really crucial role to evidence the sustainability attributes of hydrogen, particularly the carbon footprint, in a way that would be robust and indeed credible. And certification provides an important tool to improve transparency for consumers and enable consumer choice. Because in this way, consumers can indeed signal their demand for some specific types of hydrogen. In some geographies, actually, consumers are saying that because there is no access currently to physical infrastructure, they may want to purchase certificate unbundled from the physical commodity. So from the perspective of global trade in hydrogen, taking that perspective into account, a lot of experts these days are drawing parallels with the emergence and the development, for example, of LNG as a global commodity, and how in time, going forward, some pricing benchmarks can emerge at regional level. But of course, it's important to bear in mind that in the case of hydrogen, the value of hydrogen is contained both in the physical value of the commodity, but also in the value of the environmental attribute, which is contained in the certificate. Hence, the importance of the design of certification schemes for hydrogen in effectively fostering those cross-border exchanges in hydrogen going forward. Today, indeed, there is a number of countries, including Korea, Japan, UAE, and of course Europe, that are looking at and are already having plans to develop certification schemes for hydrogen. And something that Harry, my colleague from IRENA, mentioned, and we are working very closely with IRENA on this topic, effectively, because of some policy choices or the potential differences in terms of the design of the schemes, or choices about the system boundaries that are adopted in these schemes, we may end up in a situation that these schemes cannot talk to each other, in the sense that we risk having a fragmented picture where the sustainability attributes and carbon footprint in particular of hydrogen, is evidenced in different ways through those schemes. And that indeed risks market fragmentation. So in order to address that challenge, what we have launched back in April this year is a dedicated project to look at in particular, how to bridge those gaps, address those challenges, and actually create a roadmap and a checklist for the countries and the relevant national authorities that are seeking to design certification systems for hydrogen to enable mutual recognition, to make sure that the hydrogen certification systems can talk to each other. And this is precisely what we are doing with the projects that is ongoing now. And we will be unveiling the roadmap and the checklist at the next COP in Egypt. And we're very pleased to be partnering with our both European and international partners. So we have a strong advisory board with the best and the brightest experts from IRENA, the IEA, H2 Global Foundation in Germany, but also, of course, Hydrogen Europe and our colleagues in WBCSD and the World Economic Forum. So we have already done the initial mapping exercise where we looked at different types, design features of the schemes, chain of custody, governance, supervision, verification, and now we are laying out, finalizing the roadmap and the checklist to lay out the solutions for mutual recognition. And the work doesn't stop there. Together with the IEA, we are setting up a dedicated technical task team to bring together the national authorities to debate and help exchange knowledge and good practices on the design of the schemes to ultimately make sure that the schemes are robust, and importantly, they talk to each other, and we end up in a situation where the certificates for hydrogen are fungible, and you can trade them cross-border. I would also just want to take a step back and say that, again, the certificate evidences that hydrogen has a certain unit of hydrogen has a given, let's say, sustainability credentials, carbon footprint. But certificates can be only as robust as the methodologies that are used to assess that attribute. So what we are supporting and what we are facilitating is the development of a common global ISO standard methodology for assessing the carbon footprint of all hydrogen production pathways. And this is critical in order to allow the least carbon-intensive solution to shine and to reveal their carbon abatement benefits. So we're working closely with our colleagues in IPHE, International Partnership for Hydrogen Fuel Cells in the Economy, building on their guidelines document. We are syndicating industry input, and we are very much supporting the development of this dedicated ISO standard. Already next year, we will have a best practice that can be adopted by early movers in the industry, and within 2 to 3 years, we'll have finalized our ISO standard. But in the meantime, the best practice will be there, and this will provide a really important benchmark, an important tool in order to be able to compare apples and apples and to know and to assess the sustainability attributes and carbon footprint in particular of hydrogen produced in different geographies. And that again is also a crucial prerequisite for the establishment of robust schemes, certification schemes for hydrogen, and indeed cross-border trade. So certification, when it comes to hydrogen certification, one can see it as a very technical issue, and of course there are different elements to this puzzle, if you like. And what we're trying to do is to make sure that we keep all the pieces of the puzzle in order, that we keep them on purpose, and that we help fostering cross-border cooperation and cooperation between the relevant governments and international organizations to make sure that we move towards mutual recognition, and we provide solutions for mutual recognition between those schemes to foster the development of global cross-border markets for hydrogen. I'm just going to flag that in a couple of weeks' time, we will be releasing our latest Hydrogen Insights report. You may know that the Council is publishing those periodic reports where we basically illuminate the status quo of the global hydrogen industry. And this report is interesting because it sheds light on where do we stand in terms of project announcements versus FIDs. And the debate that we had earlier today, I think, resonates very well, and it's sort of backed by the figures and the numbers that will be released in this report. So if we look at Europe, there are actually over 300 mature hydrogen projects that are there. Less than 10% have been FID'd. And there is indeed a pipeline of mature projects that are currently sitting on the fence and not proceeding with FIDs. And we see indeed that the lack of enabling regulatory measures is a critical barrier in order to proceed with those projects. And same comes for, in fact, the potential import capacity. So the exports units and the exporters and, that are currently evaluating the options and sort of the destination markets that they have in mind, they are primarily targeting Japan and Korea. And due to the regulatory barriers, in particular the qualifications for renewable hydrogen that are very focused on specific detailed rules and market design in Europe, currently, unfortunately, they de facto preclude the imports from third countries. This is what we are observing today. We are hopeful that this picture may change going forward. And of course, the Council is very keen to continue our cooperation with both our international partners and of course our partners in Europe, and to help synchronizing the efforts of the industry and governments in order to move from announcements to FIDs. With that, thank you very much, and I look forward to our further discussions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, ma'am. This brings us to the first high-level panel discussion for the day. So I would like to first invite Mr. Diljit Singh Kohli, India representative, Port of Antwerp and Bruges. Thank you, sir. I would now like to invite Mr. Tapas Kapadia, CEO, R-West India, to the stage, please. Next, I would like to invite Mr. Roland Bahn, CEO, Topso, to the stage. Next, I would like to invite Mr. Vineet Mittal again to the stage, please. Next, I would like to invite Mr. Rajat Seksaria, CEO, ACME. I would also request Mr. Vikram Kapoor, Chief Growth Officer, Renew Power, to please join us on stage. Next, I would like to invite Mr. R.R. Singh, Head TED, Bureau of Indian Standards, to the stage, please. And lastly, I would like to invite our moderator, Ms. Sonia Van Ransen, Editor-in-Chief, Energy Monitor, to the stage. Over to you, Ms. Ransen.
Right, good morning, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here today for the first EU-India Hydrogen Forum. The first, I hope not the last. It certainly sounds like we have a lot to talk about, and I'm hoping for an exciting panel on the back of the keynotes we had this morning. We'll have about half an hour for this. I know we're running a little bit late, so it's just going to be 30 minutes. So I'd ask our panelists to be as short and as to the point, as provocative as you like, but to get some key messages out there and hopefully provide you with some points to reflect on and some input to take out into the informal networking over lunch, etc. afterwards. So let's kick off right away. I think I'll introduce, I'll remind you who everyone is. I know the signs are a little bit small to see as I hand the floor to each of them. So first I wanted to turn to the port of Antwerp. Diljit Singh Kohli, the Indian representative for the port here. And we heard a mention of ports earlier and the fact that at ports in India, at least, bunker facilities are being constructed to store potentially green hydrogen or derivatives such as green ammonia. the question to you would be, we've also heard Europe is probably going to want to import a lot of hydrogen, assuming the regulations allow it to do so. What potential do you see for green hydrogen coming into Antwerp and basically as a port? How ready are you for this?
Yeah, good morning. I think we've heard in the morning that Europe will definitely be importing a lot of green hydrogen going further. And I'll just brief you quickly about what we are. We are one of the largest ports in Europe. We have a very big chemical cluster. We are the largest chemical cluster that we have at the port. So it also means that we do a lot of carbon emissions ourselves. And that is one of our challenges. We are actually a part of the problem when we talk about renewable. But that also drives us the change to actually bring in more renewable resources. As a port, we are actually doing a lot of things from ourselves. We do quite a good lighthouse projects that we call it the short-term projects. We are working on capturing a lot of carbon dioxide at the port because of the chemical cluster. By 2030, we're looking at around 50% of that carbon dioxide to be captured, which will be stored and again reused or maybe used to produce methanol. The second objective that we have is obviously to look at production of green hydrogen at the port. We have a dedicated area at the port which is around 90 hectares of land, which we are purely dedicated to circular economy. One of the companies that has recently signed up as concession at the port is a company called Plug Power, an American company, which is going to produce green hydrogen at the port, approximately around 350 tons of green hydrogen every day, which is the type of looking at. The third objective obviously is looking at the coalition. We already formed a coalition and did a couple of studies in the past, a feasibility study with industry players at the port, companies like DME, Exmar, NG, Waterstoff.net, to actually import green hydrogen molecules from countries which can produce, which have abundance of sunlight and wind energy. And we did a study around technical parameters, the financial parameters, and also the regulatory parameters. And it is found that that particular import possibility is there, which will be more in the forms of hydrogen carriers in terms of methanol and ammonia. We looked at different parameters around which countries we selected. Currently, we're looking at Chile, Namibia, Egypt, Oman, other countries that we've been looking at. India, definitely, we not close doors or anything. If once India, the infrastructure is developed, we look at that. To answer your question right now, whether we are prepared for that, yes, we do. We do have an existing infrastructure in place because of the chemical cluster. We have 1,000 kilometers of pipeline at the port. We do import almost 15% of Europe's LNG requirements at the port. We store that. So, and we're also looking at having bunkering facilities for hydrogen in future. So yeah, we are gradually getting there. It's a gradual process because depending upon the scale, we do have in-house capabilities of setting up more pipelines, setting up an infrastructure. So yeah, over a period of time, we will definitely be ready for that.
So there's a lot of existing infrastructure that can be repurposed for hydrogen, and so a lot of studies underway. Do you have a preference for the form that it arrives in? Hydrogen, methanol, ammonia?
So I think it's all going to be driven by the car. We do have options for all the kind of hydrogen carriers that can come in, and we've done studies on most of the carriers from different countries depending upon which is suitable. So it'll give the industries a better option about what they want to select, and depending upon that, the infrastructure will be laid down in future.
Okay, so they're all options at the moment.
Yeah, they're options. So we do have a roadmap, and we are looking to really implement that roadmap.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. I wanted to turn then back to Vineet Mittal from the Avada Group, who you heard from earlier. So you were basically inviting the EU to come and close a deal for these at least 10 million tons and lock in an affordable price for the next 25 years. I imagine in some quarters, certainly a very welcome invitation. The big question, I imagine, is are you going to be able to deliver? So one of the main I guess, subjects that is always discussed in Europe when it comes to hydrogen and skepticism is we still need to decarbonize the power system, which is going to require a huge amount of wind and solar. And then on top of that, we're going to want to turn some of that into hydrogen. In this case, India, as we rightly heard, has growing energy demand of its own. There's a power sector. Then there's hydrogen. Some of that will be used here. And then finally, some of that is going to be available for export. So it sounds like the numbers simply of renewable power that you're going to need here is going to be enormous. So how feasible is that?
So thank you for a good question. I think it's all driven from our Prime Minister's vision is energy independence. And part towards that is exporting green ammonia molecules from India, as well as green methanol and sustainability aviation fuel. And the reason that India can do it successfully, we are blessed. The Thar Desert alone can power the entire South Asia by having the solar panel there. And if our grid was connected with other neighboring nations, you will be seeing that if we connect it theoretically to Saudi, 3.5 hours of hedging on solar, and if you combine it with the wind, we are looking at 15 to 16 hours. So we have abundance of solar, wind, water, almost like say, look at central India, 40% of the river's water is going into the sea directly. So the raw material is in abundance. Our sea has a draft of 10 to 15 meters. So locations where Avada is locating its own green ammonia plant is having a 14-meter draft. So that makes it eligible to transport, say, 30,000-tonner ships. The big 300-meter ships can go. So I think the concern that there is a conflict between energy and ammonia requirement and local requirement is hypothetical. Though we can keep debating about it, merit and demerit, but the country and this sector will run based on the government policy. And government is incentivizing, as you heard from our secretary, exports. So if government was not keen to export, they would not incentivize generation in the export market. So that fear gets allayed from there. So that means India has figured out how to address its own energy need and at the same time export. Plus what European Union and others are failing to understand is that India has a huge grid. And our peaking power requirements can be easily met through solar and wind hybrid. It gives the peaking hour of morning, day and evening. All the three are matching with our profile of 15 minutes interval of solar and wind. So what is the huge advantage with India? The reason we can provide you the stable price for next 25 years because our cost structure is frozen on day one. And the policy stability with the interstate transmission system and banking facilities is so amazing that it's a boon to the whole sector, not just to Indian buyers, but to the European buyers. So overall, I think I very strongly believe that Europe should try and see. The other thing I'll tell you, I am the only player in the world who is running 1250 megawatt of operating plant. To do a 1250 megawatt, you need a 100-kilometer boundary wall. You need 1.6 million solar panels, and at the peak, you need 5,000 laborers to install and align the solar panel so your robots can run. And now in my 3,000 megawatt solar plant, which I am setting for my ammonia facility, the boundary wall is 160 kilometers, half of Delhi, my friends. And to manage such a large facility, Australia can talk, many other countries can talk, but where are the human resources? Today you go to the Europe, they are asking 40 minutes to deliver you the food. You see at the airport, it takes sometimes 2 to 3 hours to come out of the airport. So where is the manpower going to come from? So the challenge is that if you need energy transition to happen before 2030, India has to be integral part of that solution. And there are multiple players in India who can do it successfully. And we have built the single largest solar power plant, and we are doing the second one. So I think fear can be overcome by using proper due diligence methodology. You do due diligence on Indian companies, see the level of their preparedness, see their FID, and you talk to all the 4 technology players. Our co-panelist is here. He will say that his talent pool resides in Noida. The other company will say in Vikhroli in Bombay. The third company will say in Gurgaon. So the talent and execution, India is no match.
Okay, I'd like to follow up. I'm going to get through the other panelists first to make sure we get them all in. Thank you. Some very salient points. Let's turn back to the European side then. RWE, we have with us the CEO of RWE Supply and Trading, Tapas Kapadia, here in India. What potential supply and demand do you see for green hydrogen imports into Europe? We heard earlier today that the way regulation is looking, there might be no imports at all. Obviously, there is appetite in the current situation. Based on what we've heard so far, what's your I guess, assessment?
Yeah, I mean, music to our ears when you say fixed price contract for 25 years. We are traders, so we are looking at price and performance of a contract, and that's where we come in, and we want to sign a contract that performs and prices as predicted. The reality today is that we don't see that yet, especially when we're talking about India as a green hydrogen supplier, be it what projects are in FID or what projects are feasible, etc. Some other countries are putting money where the mouth is already, and they are kind of ahead in the curve, let's say, in discussions for import into Europe. But to be honest, it is ironical that the capacity is there or resources are here, but I think there are some few steps to be taken before it can reach that stage of signing under the dotted line, so to say. In terms of regulations into Europe, obviously we have spoken a whole morning about it. I think there are some barriers to cross there as well. So right now, from our perspective, we are watching from a bit of a distance and looking at things as they are progressing and see if we find an opportunity to get into the business. We are, as RWE Supply and Trading, one of the largest commodity traders in Europe. We have an office here and world over as well. So we are in the business of finding opportunities to do commodity transactions worldwide. And so we are, our eyes and ears open. But right now we're waiting and watching. Yeah, that's where we are.
Okay, just a quick follow-up. Have you made any assessment or analysis to date of the potential of India specifically, I guess, within the wider company as a source of green hydrogen? Because as we heard, there's other countries out there, Australia, Chile, Northern Africa. Is there anything you can say about how you view the potential here, India as a source of imports?
Yes, so right now our assessment is very high on potential, but we are yet to see a sizable capacity at FID stage to say, okay, we can sign a contract. So I think potential is very high. Obviously, it has been talked about, and we have seen that on the ground, a lot of ambitions from a lot of industrial groups to produce electrolyzer. There's obviously abundant renewable energy available in India. So maybe just a matter of time before something concrete comes up. And as traders, obviously, something concrete is needed before we progress. So, yeah.
Okay, thank you. Let's turn back to India then, to ACME and Rajat Seksaria. And so, well, yet to see large volumes, so yet to see, as you say, things I guess being implemented, and yet time is of the essence. If anything, the current crisis has obviously accelerated interest and need for green hydrogen. The focus of this session was going to be on certification, and anything you sell to Europe in this case is going to have to be certified as green. So how are you going to ensure it counts as, well, green for Europe? And I guess how optimistic are you about the certification initiatives you see out there at the moment, that this is going to be a viable trade route?
Okay, so thanks for getting me on this. I'll just start my my comments on one aspect before I answer the question on why are we not seeing more traction on ground on real projects, right? One is the element of technical certification and the technology. But one more element which I understand, which to me, my knowledge is more important, is how do we get the commercial model right? So I started marketing green ammonia 2 years back when this was a very new concept globally. And when I approached various buyers, including Europeans, and when I said that green requires a fixed price model for 25 years, I would get amazing glares from them because they'd say, okay, your market is not very evolved. We are in Europe in a very evolved market. Everything is market price. So forget about getting a 15 or 20-year fixed price. Everything should be based on spot pricing and market pricing. Unfortunately, we had this European event right now. But fortunately, from a commercial point of view, when now you see the pricing of power going from 50 to 500 or 1000 megawatt, suddenly people have now started seeing virtue in the fact that long-term fixed price contract actually makes sense, and it is not a sign of being backward in how you have evolved as a commercial market, right? And that's what I am now increasingly hearing from various companies. So the fast track to success is, yes, technology is required, yet regulations, there are things which can be overcome through design inclusions. But the most important point is people need to understand we need to bring the uncertainty down in such a large investment, right? How do you bring the uncertainty down? You know the prices fixed for 10 years, 15 years, 20 years. Good for the customer, good for the supplier. So this is a fundamental mind shift that various markets will have to do, which otherwise thought they've evolved so much that they don't need fixed price, 15, 20, everything has to be market determined, right? So this is a comment I would think I've got over my 2 years, and so fortunately within 2 years the mindset shift is already there. In fact, I had a couple of customers saying, talk only if you want fixed price, we are not talking spot prices anymore. Secondly, on the certification, okay, so we got one of our plants certified. We at least claim that was the first green certification for a plant that's not in India, that's outside India. We went about with whatever norms are available. The problem is what goalpost do you target? Because the goalpost is changing every day. And you know, let me be a bit more provocative. Clearly, there are lobbies behind it, right? I'm happy we are talking about green hydrogen here, but that's not how the conversation is shaped globally. They're still talking clean, they'll talk blue. You know, so we are kind of losing the plot there. And then you know who are the large players behind blue. You are the large oil and gas companies. They have their own ways of getting around things. And within that, we have got such a confused regulation, which rather than enabling a green transition, is actually holding us back, right? And some of them are very commonsensical, doesn't require too much of knowledge of the subject to kind of come out with the regulations. So yes, right now regulation is a key parameter. We have the particular benchmarks to be set. There I must say, yes, Europe has taken a lead, but not the whole thing has been stretched so much that the act came in 2018, the delegated acts in India, we call them rules, and we are sitting in 2022 and we still don't have the rules, right? Then that begins another level of uncertainty. Bankers ask me, what is the regulations? Suppliers tell me, we don't know what the regulations, what will you supply us? So we are now debating what will actually be supplied and what will that be costing. So yes, regulation is a key cornerstone of any material, credible contract which will ever see the light of the day. So non-physical factors, I would say, are the key to expediting most of these projects. And yes, I would say we are ready with several projects. I'm sure Vineet is ready with several projects. In fact, I'm in Europe next week talking projects of take from India, and I'm sure we'll see a lot of development there with RED II regulations. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, two very good points on the commercial model and the renewed interest in long-term contracts as a way of being able to secure investment. And then, yes, we still don't have the rules, so we're talking about creating a market and trade on something which we haven't really defined. I want to turn to Roland Baan, CEO of Topso, so a technology provider. How important is green hydrogen certification for you to grow your business? I guess we're talking electrolyzers, thinking electrolyzers here. And would it be easier in a way? I guess it doesn't necessarily solve the certification problem, but to be thinking more in terms of the derivatives of hydrogen and trade in ammonia, methanol, whatever it might be, rather than pure green hydrogen.
Yeah, thank you. So I think you're absolutely right that certification, standardization of hydrogen, green hydrogen, or whatever color, we have to get away from the colors, by the way. If you really want to work with a standardization, you have to do away with the colors and have ISO certification as you have in all energy products. Otherwise, it doesn't work. then you can make choices. Once you have that, then countries can take choices whether they want to go for totally zero carbon, for low carbon, what is accessible for them, what is affordable for them. So that's one. The second thing is that although we talk about the hydrogen economy, in our view, hydrogen is just a building block. It's a feedstock. The future, in our view, and we might be absolutely wrong, is that a lot of the hydrogen will be produced where there is an abundance of cheap power, renewable power. That is in places where, generally speaking, the demand is not. North Africa, Middle East, Australia. And in that sense, I would not count India in that, but I'll come back to that. So hydrogen itself as a traded commodity globally is going to be a huge challenge. It's, the drawbacks are enormous, the technology is not there yet, etc. The infrastructure is not there. So we see much more that hydrogen will be traded as a derivative, specifically ammonia, but as well methanol. So coming then to India, India is indeed a huge opportunity. I mean, I'm really taken by, almost surprised by how much power and passion there is behind the development here in India. But I do think that initially it will not be an export market. I think it will be initially, and for quite some time to come, a domestic market for two reasons. One, there is, generally speaking, a shortage in power. So you will have always a competition between electrification of the economy and the derivatives. And secondly, the derivatives can be used locally before you actually can get to the exports. But back to the point, we think that it is derivatives, and we do believe that you need to have standardization and get away from colors.
Okay, thank you. So your view is not a big export market for the time to come, despite, I mean, as we heard, this is a clear, there's clear incentives to export, and it is part of India's energy independence plan, but you're not convinced yet.
When you have, as a country, when you have an energy need that's much larger than what you can produce yourself, there is little sense in exporting the little energy that you do produce to other far-flung countries. In other words as well, CBAM and comparable structures will force industries outside of Europe and the US to produce more low-carbon products. Otherwise, you will not be able to come into that market. So it makes more sense for India to produce added value products with, let's say, low-carbon solutions in order to be much more competitive in the Western markets.
Okay, thank you. I'll give you a chance to respond perhaps in a moment, but wanted to come first to Vikram Kapoor from Renew Power. And again, I would say feel free to pick up on the points that have already been made. You're also a big renewables producer, looking to move into green hydrogen. How much can you build, and is there going to be scope for export, and can certification help with that?
Sure. Renew is today, outside of China, Asia's largest renewable energy company in terms of operating capacity, right? We have 8.5 gigawatts of capacity which is operating, right? So we definitely, Sonja can build a lot. I wanted to start my response by firstly thanking EU to take an ambitious target of 20 million tons of green hydrogen by 2030, because without demand there cannot be an industry. I also wanted to thank the government of India to sort of put in place, sort of policies which has resulted in this conference to happen, right? With the high-level delegation from EU showing up here, right? I think one of the things which have always surprised me is that, whenever we have gone outside the country and in many of these types of green hydrogen conferences, India has always been a little bit of an afterthought when it comes to green hydrogens as a green hydrogen supplier compared to an Australia or an Oman or an Egypt or a Chile, right? And when I ask people, why is that, and they focus on three things and they say that, look, there's a lot of land, there is a lot of sun, and there's a lot of wind in all these countries, like there is in India. So why? What's special about India? And I wanted to bring the attention of this August gathering to three things which India has, which I think outside of China, no other country, right, which Europe today is looking forward for supplies of green hydrogen to brings to the table, right? India brings these three unique capabilities, right? First, I think the 20 million tons of green hydrogen will require 400 to 500 gigawatts. 400 to 500 gigawatts of renewable capacity to be built, right? Like my friend Vineet said, that requires an existing ecosystem, that requires contractors, that requires planners, that requires laborers. It takes a decade to build that. India has that existing here, right? We have 3 or 4 large companies sitting on the dais. We have a few more sitting there. So the execution capacity required on renewable side sits in India. The second big thing is that, where are the modules, etc., going to come from, right? We've all seen the downside of relying a lot upon one country. I think India is going to be, in the short run, driven by the PLI policies of the government, producing our own captive as well as export requirement for the world of solar modules, right? I think that's another key element. And the third point, which has been talked about earlier, but I wanted to give a nuance on that, 200 gigawatts of grid is unique. Oman is being talked about. Oman has the total grid size of 30 gigawatts. What does 200 gigawatt allow India to do? It allows India to produce the green electron in the most efficient region of the country and then transport that green electron in a very, very, environmentally friendly way, in a very safe manner, to a port location where you can convert the electron into a green molecule and export, right? It's energy efficient, it is cost efficient, it is environmental efficient, right? And to enable this, Sonia, to come to your question, I think there are two key things. My friends have talked about the standards piece, so I will not dwell upon that. I think the standards need to become practical. The current standards are not. The current EU standards will throttle. The clarity needs to emerge. Rajat talked about it. I think it cannot be a moving target. It has to be set. And the last point I would make is that apart from the standards, the amount of funding required to execute this is in the order of magnitude of $500 to $700 billion, right? Where is that going to come from, right? I think Europe will have to step up and the US has, through an IRA, to provide money on the table under this the right framework agreements, right? So those are some of the thoughts, at least from our perspective.
Okay, thank you for that. Let's bring in our final speaker then, Mr. R.R. Singh from the Bureau of Indian Standards. What scope do you see for cooperation on standards between India and the EU? We've heard a lot about what the EU is busy with, but presumably it would make sense to have at least a conversation about what's going on here. And if you're a company in India producing green hydrogen, you'd ideally not like to have to certify, I don't know how many times, to get it into different markets.
Thank you, ma'am. So actually in the morning also the minister has told that we have got a very ambitious project about green hydrogen generation in India. And it's approximately the government is going to spend around 3,000 crore rupees on this green hydrogen project. Hydrogen is hydrogen, whether it is produced by green way or gray way or pink way or turquoise way or by pyrolysis or by electrolyzers. So the question is that what we are going to do with the hydrogen. Only hydrogen generation is not important. Whether we are going to use it for fertilizer manufacturing, whether we are going to use it for as a vehicle fuel in fuel cell vehicles or IC engine based on hydrogen, or in aviation sector or in rail sector. So there are various uses of hydrogen. Now the question is that what is the role of standards in generation and the final use of hydrogens? So as most of you may not be knowing, but BIS is the national standards body which is entrusted with the responsibility of setting national standards, as well as we are also in the field of certification. So you will be surprised to know that in the year 2002, when there was no such talk of hydrogen, we had formulated standard on hydrogen fuel. There are various standards which are in place. For example, liquid hydrogen fuel tank standard is there. So 13985. Then hydrogen fuel quality product specification 16061 part 1. Then we have got 12619 series of standard which are going to be used with on the vehicles for various kinds of components such as pressure regulators, valves, pressure regulating devices. So we have got series 16 standards on various components which are going to be used on vehicles. If hydrogen is going to be used as a fuel in those vehicles. Then we have got for storage, we have got a standard for 16735 2018. And for safety of hydrogen system, for basic consideration, we have IS 16749, which was formulated in 2018. Then we have got hydrogen code of practice, code of safety, that is 15201. Then basic consideration for safety of hydrogen system, that is 16749. Then hydrogen generators using water electrolysis process for industrial and commercial applications, that is 16509 part 1 2016. So various standards are there. Now the Government of India, Ministry of Renewable Energy has set up 3 different subgroups for relooking into the standards and see. These 3 subgroups are working on the area of hydrogen generation, storage, and the use of hydrogen in mobility sector. So they are looking at all the standards which have been formulated by BIS and any other international standard which is available on these topics. And the gap analysis is being done, and if at all any upgradation of Indian standards is needed, that will be done very, very fast. So I hope, because the whole issue of hydrogen is coming because of the climatic issues. So the climatic issues they do not belong only to India or EU or something like that. They belong to the entire globe. So I think we should all come on a single platform for a single standard for the entire world to follow, so that the aim and the purpose and the objective of the climate change is addressed. So as far as the certification is concerned, as and when required, the question is that what we want to certify, whether we want to certify the hydrogen generation system or the entire management system of the hydrogen generation and distribution, or we want to see whether it is being done as per green practices or not, whether they are following some environmental management system practices or not. So all such things are to be considered, whether occupational health and safety issues are addressed. So there are various standards for various kinds of systems and products and related subsystems. So we have to see what we have to follow, and accordingly the ministry will issue regulations, and the certification and all will fall into place.
Okay, thank you. So I appreciate it's early stages still, and there's decisions over, as you say, whether you certify the entire supply chain, production, transport, etc., whether you go beyond greenhouse gas emissions. And I suppose a question too over to what extent it makes, what kind of alignment you would need between different certification schemes, assuming we're not going to get a single standard globally. Is it enough to align on methodology and make sure standards are compatible, or would you need to align on what you label something, if you call something green, for example, and on certain thresholds, emission thresholds and so on? Those are all decisions that I suppose are further into the future for now.
We are open to any kind of suggestions which come for the improvement of the standards, whether it comes from EU or ISO, IEC or whatever platform, we are open to that. There is no problem in that. We want to harmonize our standards with the global established practices.
Yeah. Okay, perfect. We're going to have to wrap up in a minute, I would say. Is there anyone who wants to come back? I imagine you do. Anyone else, just so I know, who wants to? You too? Okay, we'll make those, if you can both be brief, we'll make those our final 2 interventions, and then you're going to have to continue talking over lunch.
So if you have to become Nadal, you have to come to the tennis court. So RWE and Vitol, if they want to buy green hydrogen, green ammonia from India, they have to start interacting with players and start doing due diligence. See, if you sit on fence, you will have all the fears. So India is capable, and India is going to export. And second point on India's own need of energy, India is going to do 500 gigawatt. we are just growing 6% energy requirement. So we are setting up huge quantity of renewable energy to service other industries. So I don't think that fear is genuine. I think India can do both, meet its own need as well as export for the global market.
Thank you. That's clear. Finally.
See, just one more comment while regulations are being framed. See, we all assume that physically ammonia has to move from one territory to another. It need not. Because if India has a lot of demand, and say Japan also has a demand, right? And India keeps importing and then also keeps exporting to Japan. So where the world has even not thought about are virtual swaps, which are, I would say, more common in LNG and other markets. So we have just not evolved. For example, a lot of this trade can happen, and this is something at a country level we are doing with Japan, for example, because Japan is going to be a big importer of ammonia. They seem to be very clear in their head what they want to do. So there is a possibility that a lot of this physical generation may not actually move. And the reason there is a straddling which will happen because the targets for India are less steeper than targets for some of the other countries, right? So India can actually afford to meet their targets by 2070. By then we have to become net zero, and some of the other countries are 2050. So not all of the green produced has to be, that green need not remain in India. That green attributes can still go to some of the other countries. So that is another element. So you don't add 10% of transport carbon to the whole thing. So that's a regulation the world is not even thinking about in terms of hydrogen and ammonia. So that's a thought when some of the policymakers take that issue.
Okay, thank you for that. And you're going to have to, you have 10 seconds. That's all.
Just, I won't say much. I think we discussed a lot about how who's the best import and how do you get import into Europe. But I think as a port, we are enablers, and we look at collaborations. I think we work quite closely with the stakeholders at the port as well as the public stakeholders. And going forward, if you're going to get imports of green hydrogen into Europe, I think the whole European Union, as compared to with different ports all together, need to work together. And that's what is this last word for me.
Okay, thank you for that. A big thank you, a round of applause for our panel. Thank you, and I'll hand over back to our day's moderator.
I would like to thank all our panelists and the moderator for the fruitful discussion. It was really thought-provoking. Now it's time for our session 4 of the day. We'll be talking about the state of play of existing and upcoming hydrogen projects in the EU and India, creating and financing a pipeline in India. But before that, I would like to remind all our interested participants to, for those of you who are interested in the B2B networking sessions, to please reach out to the registration desk for further details. And our colleagues would have handed over the feedback forms. So I would request all our participants to please fill those in for your valuable feedback. Thank you. Now we have Mr. Bart Biboik from the Clean Hydrogen Partnership, the Executive Director there, for the introductory remarks. Sir, I would invite you to the stage, please. Thank you.
So, good morning, everybody, and it's really great to be here, and thanks for the invitation as well and for the opportunity to speak. I have to say congrats to this very interesting event, to all the organizers, and also I have to say that I'm very impressed about the messages that we heard today from the minister, also here in India. I think it's great to hear the openness that exists here in India also, and the willingness to work with Europe. It's fantastic news. Also, as the Commissioner mentioned this morning, we need still to do research. We need research to further drive down the costs of this technology to make sure that this technology is competitive with the fossil fuel industry or the fossil fuel technology. And that's exactly what we are doing here in our partnership. So, our partnership has 3 main partners. It's the industry, now more than 400 members. It's Hydrogen Europe Research, and you heard the CEO this morning, Yorgos Chatzimarkakis, talking about the importance also for the right policies in Europe. And then the other one is Hydrogen Europe Research. It's a research community, more than 100 universities and also research centers are working there in that association together with us. And our third partner is the public partner, it's the European Commission, which is of course also very important for us because they give us the cash money to fund all of those research projects. So we started with this Clean Hydrogen Partnership last December. It's a 2.4 billion euro partnership. Half is coming from the European Commission and the other half by the industry and the research community. We are focusing on three main points. Is the hydrogen production, electrolyzers, but not only electrolyzers, also new types of hydrogen production, low TRL. Also, the second pillar is about the distribution and the storage. We heard this morning also from the minister how important storage will be. We need to start working on that. Also, we need to start working on the infrastructure. We have focused a long time on the production side and on the end-use application side. Now it's time to build the infrastructure. We need to connect the dots. In Europe, we are thinking, for example, also using the natural gas pipelines to refurbishing them, but also on other liquid hydrogen carriers like methanol and ammonia that we heard. So we will work on that. And also we need to now also think about working on hydrogen refueling stations, not only for cars, because we have them already in Europe. They are ready. We can deploy them. But also, how about aviation? How about trains? How about trucks? We have to work on that. The third one is about the end-use application. There are enormous amounts of end-use applications for hydrogen. We work on all of them. But in the transport, we will really focusing on the heavy-duty, aviation, for example. Then on the heating and cooling, we are working on micro-CHPs. And in the industry, I think it was already mentioned, steel, cement. We need to help also those big industries to decarbonize using hydrogen. Finally, we have a kind of horizontal matters as well, which is hydrogen valleys. I come to that in a minute. And also we work on the pre-normative research for regulation codes and standards. And also there, I believe there's a very good opportunity to work together with the research institutes here in India. And it was already mentioned how important it is that we have standards all over the world and that they are the same. So, about hydrogen valleys. In Europe today, we have about 56 hydrogen valleys identified, but there are around 14 hydrogen valleys that are really advancing. And so, from the commissioner from research, I got a very clear request in the Repower EU. She said, Bart, I want you to deliver 50 hydrogen valleys by 2025, really starting, not identified, but really that they start construction of it. And so that's now a big target. I got 200 million euro extra for that, so I'm working on that. And more important is that we're working globally together also to put hydrogen valleys worldwide. And this is in the mission innovation. And that's also where India is part of it. So we are really already cooperating in that and exchanging learnings with each other. And so I would also call up to India to deliver or to make a lot of hydrogen valleys, because for us, this is the way how we can scale up very fast and also make sure that bottom up there is a demand and that it's built with the society together with them, and it's not only top down. So one of the very important things is, of course, electrolyzers, and we have been doing research already more than 10 years, and we started at that time with 150 kilowatt. Today we are building projects with 100 megawatt. But of course it's not enough. We need to go to the gigawatt scale. But I just want to also say that the market today, I mean, we are just getting now experience with 20 megawatt, 50 megawatt building. So we still need to learn a lot. And that's why we need to do research. But if you learn, I mean, if you hear the targets that the Commission, but that worldwide we have all set, it's still a big challenge to get there. And so we have to work together to make sure that we can build those gigawatts. And we need research still to do that. What we will focusing on is on cost reduction. So we need to bring down the capex of the electrolyzers. We will work also on critical raw materials. We need to change the materials to cheaper materials, for example, and also standardize containers, maybe 10 megawatt, 20 megawatt, and then we put them all next to each other to make 100 megawatt. And also we need to make sure that all the different manufacturers of the electrolyzers that they can talk to each other. Because if we want to build an electrolyzer plant, and for example, we use Nel on one hand in the first call, and we build maybe 100 megawatt, and then we want to build another 100 megawatt, at least that we have competition, that we don't need to go to the same one again, but that we can build and come. So that's why they will need to talk the same language, and that's where we will work on. That's we call standardization. On the hydrogen refueling stations, in Europe we have today already around 200 hydrogen refueling stations being built, mainly in the middle of Europe. We have now a policy that is coming up, hopefully by the end of the year, that will require that every 150 kilometer, it's not yet decided, it's in debating, but around 150 kilometer is at least the proposal today, a hydrogen refueling station will be built along the main corridors in Europe. And if this is come true, that will of course scale up also the hydrogen refueling station manufacturers. And also I believe here we have an opportunity to work together with India, because we need again the same standards. It will reduce the cost. Let's see, next slide. Okay, that's one. Another one, it was mentioned this morning, education. It's crucial. I mean, in Europe we have huge targets set. You heard 20 million tons, 40 gigawatt electrolyzers by 2030. But without having the right people, we will not get there. So we need to skill our people. So we have a lot of educational training programs. And also here, I believe there's a very good opportunity to work together. And I believe that also India might help us to reach our targets. And we have to do that together, because you have very high-skilled labor as well here. And then finally, my message is safety. We have to make sure that everything what we do is safe. Because if an accident happens, it will be a huge setback for the entire hydrogen sector. So what we did in Europe is we have a European safety panel, a hydrogen safety panel. They are analyzing all the incidents that happens with hydrogen in Europe. They stored in a big database, and they shared the lessons learned. We are happy to share also those lessons with you. And also, if you have such a lessons, please share them with us, because we are in the same boat. We need to accelerate, and we have to make sure we do it in a safe way, and we have to learn from each other on this way. And finally, it was mentioned, we have the European Hydrogen Week from the 24th to the 28th of October. It's the biggest hydrogen event in Europe with top-level, high-level speakers. So if you want to know what's going on in Europe on hydrogen, that's where you need to be. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, sir. It's now time for our second introductory remarks. I would like to invite Shri Lalit Bora, Joint Secretary, Ministry of New and Renewable Energy, Government of India, to the stage, please.
Mr. Bart, Executive Director, Clean Hydrogen Partnership, dignitaries from the Government of India and European Unions, institutions and industries from EU and India. Good morning to everyone. We are grateful for your participation in this first EU-India Green Hydrogen Forum. I would like to thank Mr. Bart for the impressive presentation, which make us grow through the journey of the hydrogen in EU. As we all know, India with its vast RE potential and land resources is likely to emerge as a major producer of some of the least cost green hydrogen and green ammonia globally. This will cater to decarbonization of the domestic industry and mobility applications, as also enable India to emerge as a major exporter. Recognizing the potential of the green hydrogen, Government of India is working to develop a comprehensive national hydrogen mission. As the Honorable Minister and Secretary mentioned in the inaugural session today, The mission aimed towards development of a green hydrogen ecosystem by providing a bouquet of financial incentives and non-financial interventions to both supply and demand side support, as well as creation of robust framework for research, innovation, regulations, and standards. Even before the launch of mission, significant hydrogen projects have been initiated by the private and public sector in India. I will briefly touch upon few of those projects. Like in 2021, India's first green ammonia plant was commissioned in Bikaner, Rajasthan. A 500 megawatt PEM electrolyzer manufacturing capacity has been set up already in Bangalore. One of our public sector entity, GAIL, Gas Authority of India Limited, has initiated a pilot project for blending hydrogen in natural gas pipeline in city of Indore. NTPC, the largest power producer in the country, is in process of setting up India's first green hydrogen mobility project in Leh. The project will include development of a solar plant and green hydrogen generation unit in Leh for powering hydrogen buses. The project will be a unique test of the technology with sub-zero temperature at altitude of over 10,000 feet. The Indian Oil Corporation, another public sector entity, in collaboration with L&T and Renew Power, have announced formation of a joint venture company for developing the green hydrogen ecosystem in India. We are getting news every day, as our minister has mentioned in the morning, that one or the another companies are coming out with their entry into the green hydrogen area. Some of our largest renewable energy developers have taken steps to establish green ammonia production facilities in coastal area targeting export market. I am sure representative from industry would elaborate upon some of these efforts in the following interventions. In summary, I could say that initial steps have been encouraging and there is a tremendous momentum for green hydrogen in Indian market. Building upon this, India planned to come out with substantial target across sector under the green hydrogen mission. We also propose to build hydrogen hub similar to the hydrogen valley concept in Europe, co-locating bulk production and utilization of the hydrogen to optimize cost and achieve economy of scale. I am sure that these steps would also provide significant opportunities for investment and technology partnership for our European partner and institutions. Most of the projects that I mentioned already have European companies as partner and equipment supplier. Moving forward, we could intensify and channelize these partnerships and develop a strategic joint project in sectors like iron and steel, chemicals, mobility sector for aviation, rail, shipping, road transport. We welcome European OEMs to take advantage of India's facilitative industrial policy and consider setting up manufacturing capacities for electrolyzer in India. It's critical that we leverage each other's expertise and strength to build and scale demand for low carbon hydrogen in these areas. EU has set a target of 10 MMT of low carbon hydrogen import by 2030. The opportunity of trade and joint collaboration projects are therefore quite evident. A strong India-EU cooperation is there in these areas could lay the foundation for building global hydrogen supply chain. India and EU has a history of cooperation in the field of RE. Through the EU-India Clean Energy Climate Partnership, we have been supporting each other in scaling clean energy adoption and decarbonization effort. I am sure that dialogue initiated at this EU-India Hydrogen Forum would result in development of concrete projects and programs as well as financial pipelines to accelerate the growth in production and use of green hydrogen in both India and EU. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, sir. This brings us to the second high-level panel discussion for the day. I would first like to invite Mr. Edwards Bumsteins, Head of Asia and Pacific Division, Global Partners Department, European Investment Bank. Thank you, sir. Next, I would like to invite Mr. Tulsi Tanti, Chairman, CII Renewable Energy Council and CMD Suzlon Group, to the stage, please. Next, I would like to invite Mr. Thierry Leperc, founder of Saladwind Hydel Project. Next, I would invite Mr. Derek Michel Shah, Senior VP at L&T. Next, I would like to invite Mr. Kapil Maheshwari, Leader, Renewable Energy and Green Hydrogen at Reliance Industries Limited. Next, I would like to invite Mr. Christian van Olschossen, CTO Sunfire, to the stage, please. Next, I would like to invite Mr. Glenn Llewellyn, VP, Zero Emission Aircraft at Airbus. Next, I would like to invite Mr. Patrick Newman, Director Strategy Hydrogen, New Energy Coalition. And lastly, I would like to invite our moderator for the session, Ms. Shuva Raha, Head New Initiative, CEW. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. And first of all, big thanks to the European Union, the Ministry of New and Renewable Energy, Government of India, the CII, and Solar Power Europe for organizing this forum. We are running a little bit short of time, so we are going to press on with this. We've already have our speakers on the field. I'm Shuva. I head new initiatives at the Council on Energy, Environment and Water. We have been following the hydrogen research for the last several years, and also one from the technological side where we have been advising our government, but we've also been working with multiple countries and multilateral organizations on setting up a rules-based architecture for the evolving hydrogen economy with specific focus on the green hydrogen or the decarbonized hydrogen economy. So I'm going to start today's, we've got a very good introduction already from our two introductory speakers, including our Joint Secretary, Mr. Bora, and Mr. Bart Bibak. Now, picking up from there, what we were told about connecting the dots and especially related to quick infrastructure development, the pipeline of projects, the OEMs, building and scaling the demand and then serving the demand for the various types of end users and financing this economy. So this is where we are going to go. I've been told Mr. Tanti has to leave first, so sir, I'll start with you. You, of course, are no stranger to setting up almost an entire industry by yourself. So I would like to ask, given that we've heard so much about it, what is your instinct? I mean, where do you see this going from your entrepreneurial instinct? And then how do you think in the one or two things, the critical things that are needed, one from the Indian side and one from the European side?
Thank you, madam. And I really appreciate these initiatives and first time EU and India, the hydrogen forums. We appreciate about from the organization. As you know, we are in the renewable energy space, India last more than 3 decades. And India has a huge, enormous potentiality and capacity and capability to execute the large scale projects. The best part is the full established supply chain we have in India, in particular in the wind sector. India is exporting more than 30 country wind turbines. So that is a good strength is there. Now it is a time of energy transitions to go into the liquid fuel or gas. It's a great opportunity for us to convert this renewable energy into the hydrogen. And if we would like to export, then it's ammonia is the best source of things. When we see now these transitions and world is looking a huge requirement I think, as for me, is the three biggest area of challenge is there. The number one is already this session is there for financing. Till now, the renewable energy sector trade practice is established. There is a 25 years contracts, and banks and investors are comfortable to invest. And because of that, cost of energy across the world from renewable has come down drastically. It's not just the scale, but because of the financing model is very, very important is there. Today when we go to the hydrogen or ammonia point of view, I think financial institutes has the biggest constraint. How and what way the trade practice will be established. I think number one priority worldwide, because every country will domestically consume or export. The basic trade practice should be established, a long-term off-taker agreement with floor and cap, because it is a gas and liquid. And oil and gas market is a spot market. But these industries for the green cannot work on a spot. So we required a long-term off-taker agreement. And that is the area of EU and India and US should work together and make a new trade practice. I think that is the topmost priority. Number two is a capacity for the manufacturing of the electrolyzers. We are talking 10 million tons Europe and 10 million tons of 20 million Europe and 10 is India, and world is looking more than 100 the million tons. So it's required a huge capacity, like 20 million is a 500 gigawatt capacity of electrolyzers. So we don't have even 1 gigawatt production capacity in the world today properly, and size and scale. So this is the area where Europe and India can work together to establish supply chain. It's no sense to produce 100% electrolyzer in Europe or India. Some component will be produced in Europe and some component in India, and both side of company can join hands and scale up the size. And this is the second most important part of the electrolyzer to unlock the capacity. Third is the logistic, because that is the important part is there, whether domestic market point of view, the grid infrastructure, what we have in the power sector, the same pipe infrastructure we have to establish in the domestic market. But for export point of view, the port terminal and the certain logistics of the ships and other things, I think these are the third important points we have to address. So one is a trade practice, second is manufacturing, third, and if you want, fourth is a certificate, and there is a huge gray area is there. Lots of financial institutes are not comfortable how and what way the certificate and standards will follow. We should freeze across the world as fastest so that the execution side of the project can increase faster. I think these are the three, is there whatever European Union areas is the certification and standards has to be relooked 100%, because otherwise it will be very expensive fuel Europe will get. It's not advisable. We will use 100% green, that is sure, but we have to address the cost and compete the industries also. So there is a fourth area is important. And one is very clear, Europe and India can able to, requirement can be mitigate very affordable and sustainable way. And we have a huge cooperations and relation and trade is there between you and India in a renewable energy space, very successful. Why not for hydrogen and ammonia? We can extend that relationships. It will make really good impact for the global society. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Tanti. And are you going to stay with us till the end of the forum, or how do you want to do this? Yes. So I'm aware. No, thank you anyway. So we've got the leading points that will follow through. Okay. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
So I think this leads us to the next question, segues easily into that, and that's for Mr. Edwards Bumsteins, who's the head of Asia and Pacific Division of the Global Partners Department of the EIB. Now, the EIB has been funding the hydrogen projects or hydrogen-based technologies, if you will, and mobilized over almost 1.2 billion euros. And it's also working with individual countries in the EU, like Germany on the Green Hydrogen Trust, in Spain for the EU value chain. So where do we see this, the one challenge that was actually put out is that if you go into bilateral processes or between two countries, you can go there, but the pace is going to be slow. The standards are going to be bilateral. The harmonization that we're repeatedly talking about is not going to happen. So how can EIB facilitate this ecosystem building?
Well, thank you for this very interesting question. I also thank the European Union delegation and mRNE for organizing this excellent event and for inviting the EIB. EIB, as some of you know, is the European Union's climate bank, but we are also India's climate bank, if I may say. So, because we are active here since 1993, so long time, and we've done about 1.5 billion euros of renewables, solar and wind. So hydrogen is a new area, and financing is clearly a big part of the puzzle. For bankers and financiers, the key is the bankability of projects, because we have a lot of pilots, we have experiments, and to make them bankable, there is a lot of upstream work that has to be done. And together with our European partners, for example, these German colleagues, we are putting together a special facility also available to India and to Indian promoters that will be implemented by GIZ to ensure that some of these projects reach that bankability stage. Another, let's say, approach we are trying now, testing in India, is so-called sector-based loan. So this is very much results-driven product, and we specifically want to design it to meet the hydrogen, green hydrogen needs of the country. So we did have already discussions with the minister and secretary of NRE, and we do hope that in the context of G20 we will be able to roll out a concrete program. So EIB is here as a member of Team Europe, and we will be actively pursuing opportunities in green hydrogen space. Thank you.
Thank you. And we look forward to that, because I believe that over the next year, India is going to focus very strongly on not only the green hydrogen, but also the G20, G7 cooperation in this area. So we'll see how this shapes up.
Yeah, the EIB has a special role in the Long-Term Investors Club. It's a club of the usually public financiers, and we do hope that India also will take a role in this long-term investor club. We are waiting for a nomination of a institution that will be part of it. So I think there are many opportunities that the G20 presidency will give to India in the coming months, in fact. Thank you.
Thank you. So with that, Terry, I come to you because you have said that it's the new oil, which we completely agree with, that it's the new strategic oil of the 21st century, strategic fuel of the 21st century. A couple of things comes to you that now that we are looking at multilateralism in building this hydrogen economy, how important would be a rules-based architecture for this? I mean, where does that come in? How do multiple countries work together cross-boundary? That's one part. The financing part comes into that, but also the value chain comes into that. And you have certain, a fairly strong point of view on this value chain, if I may, because you said that cross-country pipelines are a more cost-effective business model for green hydrogen versus green ammonia. Do you want to tell us a little bit about that?
11 years ago, I was here in Delhi. My company, my former company, which was sold to ENGIE in 2015, Solar Direct, was the best bidder in the National Solar Mission with a 7.49 rupee per unit bid, which was 40% lower than previous bids. And people said, this company is crazy. The Hindu newspaper had a title, Solar Direct is bringing solar power to the common man. In the following 5 years, my teams based in Pune, incredibly talented Indian team, built 1 gigawatt of extremely competitive solar in 5 Indian states. Well, that prompted the acquisition by the company by ENGIE. Later on, I joined the executive committee of ENGIE. What is hydrogen? Nothing. What should be hydrogen? Everything. Well, that's what a French philosopher said about the third estate in 1789. Now, how does it take for hydrogen to become everything? And sorry, it's not a rule-based, it's business. It's bankability. There are 2 things, 2 major things. First, hydrogen is a commodity, like oil. Commodity means 2 things. It means volumes and costs. If you don't have very large volumes, I'm talking about millions of tons of hydrogen, tens of millions, hundreds of millions. That's what oil people do. You know, they do hundreds of millions of things. We need, as a hydrogen industry, to think millions of tons. And this is the first thing. And we need to be at cost, lower than the cost of fossil fuels. The second thing is system. Upstream, midstream, downstream. That's another oil expression. If you don't bring upstream, midstream, and downstream together, it doesn't work. Well, that's what we're doing at HyDL, the largest hydrogen project, actually the largest hydrogen project in Europe and one of the largest in the world. It's a 10 gigawatt project. It's a joint venture between ArcelorMittal and Fertiberia, steel making and fertilizers, downstream players who are committed to buy 6.6 million tons of hydrogen over 20 years. It's a 1 million ton project. Construction will start in a year and a half, and first hydrogen is to be delivered in 2025 from 15 solar parks. All the sites are already secured in northern Spain, 500 megawatts to 1,000 megawatts each, with equipment, electrolyzers on the sites. The EPC contracts are signed already. And 1,000 kilometers of pipelines will be built to connect those sites to the consuming places. Now, what does that say? Is that you need to think as a system, and what we're describing in this HyDL España project is a hub. A hub means having a structured collaboration between upstream, midstream, and downstream players, delivering the millions of tons that clients want. And right now in Europe, we have a dire need for gas or coal or other substitutes from Russia, as was mentioning by the EU Commissioner. We don't need that in 2050. We need that immediately. So that's the other message. India, wake up. And I know that because I know that this country showed the world in terms of cost leadership, was mentioned by the ministers. India has a role to play, but think big, think competitive, and everything is here in this country to make it happen. Entrepreneurship, capital, vision, and I want to salute Tulsi Tanti, who just left, who's one of the most celebrated entrepreneurs in the renewable energy industry. We need more Tulsi Tantis or Gaurav Sood. I mentioned my colleague Gaurav, who left ENGIE 2 years ago to start a business which was sold to Shell for $1.5 billion. Gaurav is a perfect textbook example of Indian entrepreneurship, but the systems approach needs to be taken, And what we're lacking, to be very frank, in Europe right now is this boldness into action. And to paraphrase what Yorgo was saying and what you were saying, Bart, as well, the time now has come to think into leapfrogging into this. But we are there as a team, and I think what I can say on behalf of European players is that we're very keen to play and build this together with India. We know that India is going to be by far the largest hydrogen markets in the world very soon. But it's more than a market. It has those competencies and this entrepreneurship that is the basis for success in our industry.
Thank you, Terry. We'll come back to this, but I want to now take this to Mr. Derek Michael Shah, who's the Senior Vice President of L&T. Now, Mr. Shah, you've been around for a long time and you're a veteran of this, and you've taken several initiatives to bring Indian industry the best technologies and through associations. Now you've worked with Japan, you worked with the UK. What Thierry is saying, how do you put this collaborative stream of upstream, midstream, downstream together for the technology and the partnership and to deliver those volumes at that low cost? Tell us.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me here. And I think you've touched upon a very important point, that as much as we have heard in the morning, about the trade and about the regulations, this important aspect of the technology, because the collaborative efforts that we are talking about also needs the collaborative effort in the exchange of technologies, collaborating manufacturing facilities, in order to provide the complete jigsaw puzzle of the value chain. So to that extent, I believe, L&T has actually walked the talk, since several decades, that we have been pioneers in every kind of sector that we have been, whether it has been oil and gas, whether it has been power, whether it has been metallurgy. And the fact that we have one of the largest manufacturing facilities in India, where we do very high-end manufacturing of every kind of equipment in all the spaces, including not only refineries, nuclear power plants, very high precision. And therein we want to use the expertise with after collaborating with European companies to set up manufacturing shops of electrolyzers in India. We are in discussion with several of them, and we are very hopeful that we will be able to be one of the large setting up of the large manufacturing entities of electrolyzers here. And just to add to this, I think you must have read recently, while we have been participating and speaking about the plans, we have not only spoken, we have actually set up our first green hydrogen plant in India. In our Hazira manufacturing entity, we have set up the captive green hydrogen plant, which has a solar power plant. It has its own electrolyzer. We produce the green hydrogen, and we use that hydrogen to fire our furnaces inside our manufacturing unit. And we will scale such kinds of green hydrogen plants, because we intend to be in the entire value chain. We will be ending up doing manufacturing, we will do EPC projects, we will invest in green projects, green hydrogen, green ammonia, and we will play the entire value chain.
So just to follow up on this last thing that you said, that because L&T, for example, has the scale and the expertise to do this, how do you intend to bring the value chain component, the MSMEs, the other players, the OEMs, to serve the scale that you're thinking of?
Yeah, so for us, this is not new. We have multiples of joint venture with Japanese, American companies, European companies, where we collaborate. We have, right now with us, our joint venture with Mitsubishi Hitachi, where we manufacture the high-end turbines, and boilers for power plants. We have UK, Howden for fans, Chiyoda. There are multiple companies whom we collaborate. So this is something we believe that a partnership, a very transparent partnership, very, very, I would say, respectful of the partners' expertise, value that they bring. And this kind of collaborative effort with a partner, as well as with the supply chain, which could include, as you rightly said, multiple sub-vendors, suppliers, MSMEs, and we could be the fulcrum of such a creation of such a value in India.
Thank you, Mr. Shah. And that brings me, before I come back to my EU colleagues, to Mr. Kapil Maheshwari, who leads the other behemoth in this field, which is, he's leading the renewable energy and the green ventures of Reliance Industries. Now, Mr. Maheshwari, Reliance is of course in the news for having taken a big leap and investing and putting the money where the business is. And you heard Mr. Shah talk about how he's going to be building the ecosystem. You've announced the plans to invest over USD 75 billion in renewables infrastructure, which and also separately in the hydrogen value chain to deliver that 1 ton of hydrogen at USD 1 per kg, which is the 111 as we call it. So how are you planning to go about it?
See, first of all, the overall, thanks the moderator, what you have done, people might have not recognized is that the earlier panel was EU on this side and the India was on that side. You've already mixed, so possibly whatever we have been speaking on collaboration is happening on the panel as well. On a serious, this thing, Reliance, what we have done very uniquely is probably for the first time in the world, we are looking at the whole green hydrogen ecosystem in a very holistic way. So what we are coming up with is 4 gigafactories co-located from a manufacturing aspect of every value chain item which would be required in the value chain to produce green hydrogen. And this probably, I'm saying, would be the first time in the world that this is co-located at one place. So one factory would be from polysilicon to solar modules, another factory for battery storage, the third one would be for electrolyzer, and the fourth is for fuel cells. So by that, you are covering possibly every single item, and then the fifth one, which is announced, is in the power electronics. So possibly you are covering, as what Thierry mentioned, on the production side or the, and then we are also a part of the thing which we believe is because unlike any other renewable player, we know how to handle hydrogen. And we know that this is an element which needs greater attention towards. So storage and transportation of that, which is the midstream side of it. So that is also an element in the whole value chain which we are trying to cover on that. And then the downstream having, being a user of hydrogen in our refineries because we run one of the largest refinery globally. So possibly anything where you want to, and we have already pledged that such large setup, we want to be net zero by 2035. So possibly, 35 years before countries target. And for a conglomerate like us, it really needs to start doing things from now. So what we are planning is we would do 100 gigawatt of renewable production within the country. And this 100 gigawatt primarily would be also for our own decarbonization needs, so captive consumption, and also from a hydrogen perspective for captive, for the country, and for possibly for the export. So I would just leave this forum with two things, as in country, we have always been speaking about Atmanirbhar, so which is what is self-reliance. But that's a mantra given to us possibly by Honorable Prime Minister. But as Indians, we are possibly very, very good at Atmanirikshan, which is self-introspection. That whatever we are trying to do, at least we are trying to do it in the most systematic way. Thierry already spoke and, used the thing that leapfrog, possibly we have already shown and done. So it should not be taken that these things would have a problem in terms of bankability or financing, because India has earlier shown leapfrog in other sectors, and possibly electrolyzers is not new, renewable is not new for India. Electrolysis is happening, and nothing new has come in any electrochemistry. We have done a joint venture with a Danish company for our electrolyzer also. So possibly this makes the whole thing more bankable if a player is able to arrange every possible element within its own control, within the same country, a bankable player, and an bankable technology. I feel, the business model in financing, everything exists for such a thing whenever it happens.
Thank you. That sounds great. So now I come to Mr. Christian von Ohlhausen, who's the CTO of Sunfire. Christian has also co-founded Suncoal Industries, and now he's responsible for technical management at Sunfire, which is looking to become the leading European manufacturer of electrolyzers and is by this way, a key player in the field of renewable hydrogen, gases and fuels. Now, you've heard your Indian, the value chain, what they're planning. I also want to point out that you have certain competitors, I would say, across the world. For example, you have the Pune-based H2E Power, you have the US-based Bloom, you have Elcon of Estonia, you have Kyocera of Japan. I mean, do you see them as competition or co-petition, as we call it, like a collaborative competition? But more than, before you come to the ecosystem, how are you going to feed into this value chain that's being set up, especially outside Europe, if that's part of your plans?
Yeah, thank you very much. I mean, hydrogen is not a European game, and as a hydrogen technology developer, we don't think in European boundaries. And I really like about this forum, and thanks very much for the invitation and the pleasure to talk here, that we want to push this globally. And I can only say thanks to the Indian part of this here today that we can really take an example as Europeans how bold they are progressing. And I liked Jorgo's speech in the beginning that we may not be hesitant in that aspect. Now, as Sunfire, we are a technology developer, and there's always this, the value chain of a technology company or OEM is concept, development, manufacturing, after sales. If it comes to the product concept and the process how to manufacture it, I think Sunfire has a great sort of know-how base, and we're very good at that. But ramping this technology to the scale which is required globally, and as I said in the beginning, we may not think in European boundaries, we must think globally also as a company, because otherwise we'll not be competitive. It's sort of now ramping it provides a great chance to utilize the capacities which are available globally. And certainly in this aspect, India provides, and Thierry and Derek have outlined this already, and I'll not repeat it, but India provides a very, very good ground for cooperation to find the best that each one can bring to the table, and also ensure that the technology is used locally in both areas, plus an exchange of the product. And whether India will export from the first moment on or not, there has been a discussion with the CEO of Haldor Topsøe earlier. Whether it will export or not, I will not decide on that, but I can only say scaling it, bringing up the capacities, utilizing the market potential is what we need to focus on now. And then we will also achieve what has not been touched so much today yet. But Europe is currently experiencing the consequence of being dependent on point sources. And setting up hydrogen globally from a technological point of view, but also from a value chain point of view in terms of import and export, can really be a great contribution to this lateral energy supply globally. And that is something which is a great perspective. Now, last word on competition. We have friendly competitors, and we like our competitors, and we're very happy to have them. Sunfire started in 2008, and at that point of time, everybody was questioning why we're doing this. Our competitors are auto contributors to make sure that this upstream, midstream, downstream thing happens. No company can do that on their own. Yeah? So cooperation, fair competition, transparency, that are the things that are needed right now. The market is big enough.
Thank you. And now I come to Dr. Patrick Newben, who's the Director Strategy for Hydrogen, and he's also a part of the New Energy Coalition. and also an initiator of this project called Heaven, HEAVENN, which is a set of demo projects which are bringing together core elements of production, distribution, storage, and local end use of hydrogen, and to form this fully integrated and functioning hydrogen valley, if you will. It's called an H2V, which can then serve as a blueprint for replication across Europe and beyond. And now this New Energy Coalition has 150 partners. You've been also a part of the bioenergy and the natural gas segments. How is it all coming together? I mean, one of the main challenges of any new technology are the pilot projects, the demos, and you are in that area right now. So how is that shaping up?
Yes, thank you. And foremost, to start, thank you for the Indian government for inviting us, same as the European Union. Very glad to be here. And I think we had a good display this morning on what's going on in Europe. And I think there is tremendous potential in Europe, but there is also tremendous potential in India. And I think all the speakers are aligned on that. What we did in our region has a different run-up to it. We are on top of one of the largest gas fields in northwestern Europe, the Groningen field, which exploitation came to some trouble, minor earthquakes, which triggered, let's say, many problems on the subsurface, cracks in homes, etc. And that has led our government to decide to stop the extraction of that field. And the impact of that was tremendous, 9 to 10, maybe more percentage, less regional economic growth, so less income. Suppose the gas sector leaves, we would have a problem of about 20,000 jobs. So we went look for alternatives. And we found one, because in our region we mastered the use of methane, a molecule, for the past 70 years. So we know that gigajoules of energy were transported, were extracted, etc. And we were thinking, well, if we can do it with methane, we could do it with hydrogen. So, and we investigated that, and hydrogen actually fitted as a glove. And then I met Mr. Biberg in, I think in Ljubljana, and he said, well, why don't you come over and let's have a talk? And we are developing something called Hydrogen Valleys. We started discussing, and we actually found that it fitted us as a glove. It really fitted. And we decided to bring parties together. We are a coalition of parties, coalition of the willing. Some are non-willing, but they are changing into the willing now. Sometimes these things happen. And we managed to create a full-fledged ecosystem. Some call it the valley, some call it the hub. It's actually the same. It's an ecosystem consisting of production, logistics, distribution, storage, very important. Storage is the holy grail of sustainability. You need storage. And then transport and use in industry, mobility, and the built environment. And we managed to do all these things in this little region, which is about, let's say, 1.5, 1.6 million inhabitants on the total of 17 of the Netherlands. It's small, but in size it's relatively large, but it's a very different economy from the highly urbanized regions. So we created this value chain, and something very interesting happened. Parties who thought they were competitors started joining up because they saw the perspective. And of course, when we started it, we had a project of, let's say, 100 million euros. We received a substantial funding support from the European Union and from, then at the time, the Fuel Cell Hydrogen Joint Undertaking, now the Clean Hydrogen Joint Undertaking Clean Hydrogen Partnership, which we are very, very grateful for, of this recognition and of, let's say, the challenges we encountered positively. And it's named heaven. Sometimes it's hell because it's many partners, and many partners tend to change their minds. But in the end, they're going for it. And I said, at the start we were 100 million euros, but it functions like a magnet. It has a magnet function. We see that parties are coming to us to, let's say, plan for gigawatt electrolyzers. That will take some time. But I do agree with Ms. Lepec, we don't have the time. We have to be bold. We have to be very bold. And sometimes you have to be naughty. And sometimes I think politicians need to be very bold and very naughty and row upstream, row against the stream. They have to do that. And I hope I'm not a politician, so I'm allowed to say that because nobody kicks my ass or votes for me. But I think they have to be bold. There's no time. We have no time. And I think hydrogen offers everything we want. It can be used everywhere. It's a perfect system integrator. It can do anything. Everywhere you use a molecule like methane, you can use hydrogen. Everywhere you use a molecule like coal for the hydrogen content, you can use hydrogen. You have to do that. Steel, chemistry, fertilizers, fuels, homes. In the Netherlands, 99.8 or 99.7% of the homes are connected to a gas grid. And many people thought, well, hydrogen in the gas grid to homes, maybe not. I think future will tell, but I think what's happening in Europe and at the eastern end of Europe may change that. There is a market. The market is in mobility, in built environment, and in industry. And they don't have to look at each other, they have to team up and step forward. And that's what happened in our little heaven. And we are very proud of that, and we are also very proud to put that on the table here and exchange that with you. And I'm proactive. If you want to know something, anything, contact us. Come to us. We can show you, and not everything goes well. You know, failures are part of the game. You need to fail to get better. And that's what happened in this region. I think what you are saying is Sunfire, it's not a cakewalk. But you have to go through these barriers to be better. And that's, let's say, where I can stop. I can talk for hours, but will stop myself.
No, but well done with the time. So I'm going to take a couple of minutes. You have closed with a very nice phrase. So now I'm going to go from the end, Edwardus. If you have 30 seconds each to say how you're going to be bold and naughty to bring this ecosystem up in the time that Thierry says that we don't have. So 30 seconds, then 30 seconds for you. Just wrap up.
So thank you. Excellent panel. I really learned a lot. So, and I think that the key of these exchanges is indeed to enrich each other. And EIB already made an offer to the Minister of New and Renewable Energies. And I hope we will now, following this forum, which played a very important role in bringing also the top level decision makers, now we can take the next step. And as I mentioned, in the course of G20, India's presidency, we do hope that a very concrete announcement will be made. Thank you.
Bold and naughty, I guess we are already bold as a country which hasn't been in formal hydrogen mission. I think hundreds of billions of dollars are already being, MOUs are signed and possibly our investment decisions are going on. So I don't think I think we are bold enough. So I won't try and cover naughty side. I think possibly as execution start, we'll see what naughtiness we bring to the table.
Thank you, Kapil. Thierry.
It's all about infrastructures. We're collaborating with the European Hydrogen Backbone, 31 gas TSOs in Europe, planning to build 28,000 kilometers of hydrogen pipelines by 2030. We have Enagas, part of our project, building 1,000 kilometers of pipelines. As we speak, the engineering studies have started. India needs to build at least 28,000 kilometers of green hydrogen pipelines by 2030. I would even say more. We're working right now on a project that will connect North Africa to Europe to deliver tens of millions of tons. India should do the same thing with the Gulf area, because you're going to need hundreds of millions of tons. India might have a resource, but you're going to need the Gulf to supply it. And this is, by the way, one of the projects that we intend to work with Indian partners.
Thank you. Mr. Shah, and then...
I think, forums of this kind bring all the players, stakeholders from both the sides together. And I think it's important that we leverage these associations, these opportunities to, kind of bring all the pieces of jigsaw puzzle together, whether the technology, the manufacturing, the off-takers, the end users, including the regulators from both the sides, the governments. And if we are able to do that possibly, I think we have won it, and L&T is ready to play a big part in it.
Thank you. And closing now with Christian.
Okay, so everything said means what's the next project and how can we make it along the whole value chain, upstream, midstream, downstream, including certification? I think that's the question we will take out of this room and hopefully put it into practice very soon. Thank you.
Thank you. And with that, I thank all my panelists. You already had the last word, unless you have something more to say.
I can say a little
Okay, okay.
I think, having wrapped up, I think what we need to do is work harder, work harder, work harder, get rid of stupid rules. They are hindering. It's called state aid, but it's actually state hinder. We have to get rid of that. And it's about size, bigger electrolyzers, scale, more electrolyzers, and skills. Have the people to do it.
Thank you. Thank you, gentlemen. I hope to see you all back in India for the G20 over the coming months. And thank you to all the organizers. And over to you. Thank you. Thank you.
I would like to thank our panelists and our moderator for the insightful discussion today. This brings us to the last session for the day, Perspective on the Way Forward. I would first like to invite Dr. Seshadri Chari, Distinguished Member of the Governing Council, RIS, for sharing his thoughts with us. Thank you.
Thank you. A big thanks to all of you. The conference organizers have already warned me that if I stand between all of you and the lunch, no desserts for me. So I'm not going to do that. A very quick overview of all that has transpired today will bring us to some of the most important things that were mentioned in this session. To begin with, the minister who initiated the dialogue has explained a number of things that the current ministry is doing and the Government of India is doing. I'll only add one more thing. We are also, the government is also very seriously considering to allow what we call the banking, where green hydrogen producers can bank their excess supply with local power distributors. This will be for a period of about 30 days, and these people who bank can buy back at a fixed price whenever they need. So this is being worked out. We have thought about a number of issues. So if we analyze all the points that have been made in the day and come to think of way forward, the most important factor that comes would be to combine all the factors of production, storage, distribution, usage, and supply chain mechanism in such a manner that we are able to draw maximum mileage out of all these factors. The second most important subject that drew the attention was certification and regulatory framework. Mr. Herib and Ms. Dairia very rightly pointed out a number of issues regarding regulatory and tradable certification systems. It's very important, of course, but I somehow, there was a feeling, there was also a point mentioned about saying it is very too early to talk about ISO standard methodology for assessment of GHG emission and H2. So I still feel, I mean, it was also pointed out that we should also remember that hydrogen fuel is, it's an emerging technology. So when it comes to emerging technology, do we first have regulatory framework and then think about development of the emerging technology? Should we do that? Will it not hamper innovation? That is one of the points, one of the challenges that have been pointed out. So we will have to look at that from the point of view of allowing innovation first and then come to the regulatory framework. Another issue as far as way forward is concerned was about defining the role of hydrogen in the long-term energy strategy. The fossil fuel has sustained us all for almost a century or even more. It will continue to do for some more time. But hydrogen is going to be with us for a longer time. So do we have, is there a need for a longer for a stronger strategy, for a long-term strategy? That is one thing that we will have to think of. The fifth issue that was flagged was the need for a greater cooperation in research and development, safety norms, and risk management. So, if we have to combine all these points and also think in terms of a proper way forward, I think both India and EU have held a number of structured dialogues and talks and negotiations on all these issues. So I think it is now time for us to sit down and go back to the working tables, and probably these working groups which have met all these months and years, they can be, there can be an institutional framework for this working group. So I would probably, when we go back to our respective governments and respective agencies, we will start thinking in terms of framing, making an institutional framework so that it has a permanent structure and a permanent standard operating procedure. So with these words, I thank the organizers of this conference, the European Union, the Ministry of New and Renewable Energy, Confederation of Indian Industry, Hydrogen Europe, and the Ministry of External Affairs, which I represent through RIS, which has facilitated to a very large extent the success of this conference. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. This brings us to the end of the session. But before we close, I have Mr. Matthew Cray, DG Energy, European Commission, for the closing remarks.
Thank you very much. And as representative of DG Energy here, I would first of all like to thank the co-organizers of this first forum on green hydrogen between EU and India, CII and Hydrogen Europe, and of course the Ministry of New and Renewable Energy. and certainly also all the panelists that we had in the two high-level panel discussions, which really led to very interesting, lively discussions. I think the discussions today showed really the value, also the need to bring the stakeholders and the experts on these topics together, and in a bilateral EU-India format, certainly so. I do think, however, also, and this is the one thought that I would like to leave with you during this closure remarks, it's that also the discussions showed that there's also a possible trap, I would say, that would lead to us not using, in fact, or the full potential of this hydrogen cooperation. And I refer to the fact that, at least that was my impression in the first 1.5, 2 hours, it was very much centered around a kind of a more narrow frame, the India as a possible exporter and the EU as a possible importer. The discussion whether India will one day export, I mean, it's open, and we certainly as a EU don't have to make a judgment on that. But I think what we should aim at in such a green hydrogen partnership, it has to go beyond such possible relation of one selling and one buying. And I'm very happy that the remainder of the interventions in the panels also showed and did justice at the broad scope of such a strong EU, or of such a potential strong cooperation between the EU and India on green hydrogen. We have here on the banner on the left side the logo of the EU-India Clean Energy and Climate Partnership, in which we already work with India for about 6 years now. We also have on the other side a logo of 60 years of partners in progress, and I think both those logos show us the way ahead for building this strong cooperation. It would be partners in the clean energy transition and partners in progress, yeah? And eventually also the questions on trade. The questions on international trade will of course certainly be addressed in such a partnership, but the specificities of possibly EU buying hydrogen from India could only be one aspect of this broader partnership. That's at least our view. Also, when we are talking in the Repower EU package about concluding green hydrogen partnerships with partner countries, we are looking at a kind of a holistic, in a holistic way to these issues, and also seeing with those partner countries what their energy transition trajectories are, how hydrogen fits in there, and how we can both support these developments. And we heard a lot of other interesting fields related to the hydrogen sector being addressed in the subsequent discussions, which should also have a place in our future hydrogen cooperation. It's the need still to do a lot of research and innovation on hydrogen. Bringing the costs down, bringing the efficiencies up is a strong need, a strong requirement, and I think also there EU-India cooperation could really prove its value. We heard also the Joint Secretary say that India would look forward to work together in concrete strategic hydrogen projects with the EU. Also the idea of a pipeline of projects that would be supported in the frame of this cooperation is a very valuable part of such future cooperation. I think also we heard in the last panel a number of other suggestions like the cooperation on secure supply chains, but we also heard about certain projects which take this systems and integrated approach to hydrogen, the development of hydrogen ecosystems, and I think this brings us also a bit back to one thing that was told in an earlier panel, namely of hydrogen as a building block in this energy transition. And let's not forget, at least for the Europeans who are here, that the hydrogen strategy that came out 2 years ago was part of an energy system integration strategy. And I'm very happy that in some of the experiences that were presented here, like by Thierry and by Mr. Knubben, we really show that this is the way that these projects are really being developed in Europe as hydrogen valleys, as hydrogen ecosystems. So we have, let's say, a whole number of issues, of topics on which we can really work closely together and make this hydrogen partnership, hydrogen cooperation, a very broad and rich one. And as we have such a rich list of topics to be addressed, we are already looking forward to jointly organize with Indian partners a second Green Hydrogen Forum, and I'm sure that this will be part of the framework that we're going to set up in the next months. So thanks a lot.
Thank you so much, sir. This brings us to the end of our session for the day. I would like to thank everybody for joining us today. Hope you've had a very nice discussion with your peers as well, and hope you've had a very nice discussion here as well. Before we part, I would like to inform everybody that lunch has been organized for all and shall be served at 1:30 p.m. Meanwhile, I'd request everybody to please take out the time to fill in the feedback forms that are available to you on your desks. Thank you, and have a nice day. Thank you.